threat of a global thermonuclear war between the United States and Russia has brought us closer to doomsday than ever before. As the existence of humanity now hangs in the balance, what's needed now more than ever is people standing up and declaring independence from the forces that choose to sink us to our demise.
To stand up against the pessimism that reeks in our culture, that plagues the minds of people, that has destroyed our society and our humanity. What's needed now more than ever is to regain the ability to think for ourselves once again. Instead of being divided between two opposing camps, both of which are equally wrong and totally inconsistent with what is really truthful, we seek to go outside those limits and engage in a process of dialogue with various minded people in politics, art, culture, and other subjects.
We do not believe in talking to people who share the same points of view as us, but with people that are sincere and have something productive to say on the current state of affairs in the world. And this can be anybody.
Today, we declare independence from the torchbearers and break our chains to seek out and find and talk with those who are also unafraid.
We declare independence from the tyranny of those who think they can control our thoughts and can force us to choose between what they present to us like shadows in a cave. That's why we are declaring independence.
Okay, welcome back. Another episode of Declaring Independence. I'm Jose, and this is, wait, you're not Kynan. You're not my usual co-host.
Oh, hold on. I got to check. I think we're finally up on you on Rockman. Cool.
Oh,
yeah, we're up. Oh,
okay.
That's awesome, dude. Yes, no, I'm not your normal guy, but can I fill in for my man? I mean, I know I'm not as good looking, right? So
yeah, sure, man. You're welcome to fill in, no problem. Yeah. This was kind of a little bit of an impromptu thing. I heard about this town hall. I know I think it's his first official town hall in a big mainstream media. Is that correct?
I don't know. I mean, he had that kind of like questionnaire thing that looked like a town hall the other day. And somebody asked him about running in the DNC with it being corrupt and you know, knowing that it's a captured agency of sorts. Not agency. He knows about captured agencies. That's the whole thing. That's his big thing, right? Like he explains all these captured agencies working on the behest of corporations with our government to fucking have an ultimate plan to make sure that we get shat on while the rich make the rich. And with the threat of nuclear war and the business of the war machine and big pharma and big tech, like he understands that stuff. But, you know, when it comes to the DNC, Jose, I don't think a few things are being pointed out. And I don't mean to like hijack the show, but you just gave me a brilliant idea because that little town hall thing he did have, that question was asked. And he kind of went, well, you do have a choice. Come vote for me. They really need to get on message with that campaign. The thing about that campaign, and everybody talks about the DNC fraud lawsuit in 2016, Bernie Sanders supporters, Bernie Sanders wasn't involved. And that's the main thing because people don't realize it wasn't just the fact that they proved that they're a corporation and there's no such thing as a Democrat and they don't have to abide by their charter. That case was dismissed, and it was dismissed because Bernie Sanders at the convention in 2016 acquiesced to the Democratic Party and suspended the rules, right? Had he gone through and tried to do and fight, that case wouldn't have been moot. So right now, people have to realize that maybe this time out, RFK can join the lawsuit. Like he can file the lawsuit and say, I'm taking this to court. No, I'm going to, because Bernie didn't do that. So all the guns aren't out of the chamber, or the bullets aren't out of the chamber. There's still things to happen. And why wouldn't you give a shot at it if you can? I mean, you got to go through the motions. You can't just lay down and die. And I like the fact that he's making Joe Biden pound his head. So, I mean, people have to realize that this shit ain't over yet. And I like what he's doing. And I think he should try to take it to the convention and contest this thing. If anything, expose the DNC all the time.
You know, between you, me, and the people watching the stream, I really became like a big, I don't want to say I'm completely won over yet, but after that June 20th speech he gave in New Hampshire, where he was reminiscing on his uncle's, June 10th speech given at American University. And what did he do? He did something there that honestly impressed me because he didn't say, we're at the verge of war, so vote for me. He didn't do like a Donald, I can end the war in 48 hours. Okay. I could end it right now. He said, Biden is going to be in power for another year and a half. And I call on the current administration to adopt the maxims of my uncle. See, that right there is leadership, in my opinion, because he is taking, and look, I like Cornell, but when you have people who say we're going to build a movement, I don't believe you build the movement by saying you're going to build the movement. You build the movement by taking an action. And to call on the current administration to actually do something and take RFK's advice, to follow JFK's advice, that to me is how you start a movement. And that to me is how you actually get things done.
Yeah. I just want to write some notes. I love what you got to say. Absolutely. That speech was bomb. I was supposed to be there. Unfortunately, I lost my cousin and I had to attend his funeral on that same day. People, after the funeral, we were at like at a lunch. It's an Italian funeral. So, of course, it's an Italian place. And I was on the phone and I kept on drinking some vino and I was on the phone for a while. People were like, what are you on the phone? I'm like, I'm searching every single website right now I can to try to get a plane from MacArthur, which is an Islip Airport, the end of Long Island, right? Into Manchester, New Hampshire. I couldn't find one for under $666.
Damn.
So I said, nah, but I really wanted to go because that speech was something special, and the beautiful thing about that speech, I said, I say this all the time, right? I'm going to talk about constantly the differences between RFK and Cornell. Because I do think RFK is a better candidate than Cornell right now, despite RFK sucking ass on, in my personal opinion, on the Israel-Palestine thing. But where he leads when it comes to COVID protocols and his foreign policy, I think, is they're about equal in foreign policy. The only difference is that RFK knows how to speak to both sides of the aisle. And when he said, put yourself in Russian shoes, my uncle used to say, you got to put yourself in their shoes. It's talking differently to the nation than both Biden and I'm going to end this war and I got Rocket Man, I got a big button, you know what I'm saying? It's a whole different type of language. It's really important. And Cornell, I don't know what it is their campaign that they decided to come out and attack RFK. Like, it's just dumb. Like, we need to build a coalition. I had the Jimmy Dore, Dave Smith show yesterday with Clint Russell, and we talked about this. At the end of the day, no matter what's most important, if we can build a coalition between RFK, Cornell West, and the Libertarian candidate. And the Libertarian persons on my show yesterday, Dave Smith, who a lot of are rumored to be the candidate for the Libertarians, he said that Cornell West is a better candidate. So if the leftists can't see what's there and then stop going to attacking, you know what I'm saying? This is different now. We're going to have a Libertarian, a Green Party, third parties, right, with a supposedly, because I'm going to say, you never know the trap doors, but supposedly an anti-establishment or radical or peace-moving Democrat, someone who's going against the grain, someone they hate, someone they're trying to shut out. We can build a coalition, Jose, right?
Mm-hmm.
The LaRouche people and the Schiller people will be there, right? The anti-imperialist left will be there. That's what we need to do, and I think we need to concentrate on that, and I wish Cornell would stop attacking RFK. I wish they would get out of their social justice warrior bubble. You know what I mean? Is Chris Hedges coming on and going, that's what the whites do? Like, it's not hurting my ego. It's just been tried. And guess what it did? Yeah. Get out of your echo chamber. Expand. Understand that there's a coalition to be made. I mean, RFK understands now where he's going to have some problems from the progressives and the people who are really strong pro-Palestinians. He understands that now, but Cornell needs to understand, and especially from our interview, he's got to get this book, man. And I'm only saying it because not to promote RFK, but this is kind of like a little bit of a handbook of exactly what's going on, how industry captured shit, how the three-letter agencies ran stuff, how it was a military project, how they kept cheap drugs out of people's hands. They made a movie about this. Fauci's history, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, he's got to get in there. So if they could teach each other maybe, and that libertarian comes in, that's the coalition we need to be looking for. Sorry for talking so much. You got me excited.
No, my brother. This is why I bring you on. You're the expert. And listen, going back to the speech, people give RFK Jr. a lot of crap for the Israel issue. I give RFK Jr. a lot of crap for the Israel issue. But he said something on the June 20th speech. He said, we have a problem where we divide people between bad people and good people, evil people and superheroes, right? And I had on people, these two guys, Mark Gruber and Eric Hunley, of this show called America's Untold History or Untold Stories. They're very good at what they do, you know. But they came on my show and they were like super pro-Israeli. And I mostly let them talk because they were giving me points that even I couldn't just refute. I just didn't know how to. And so it made me realize something with listening to RFK. You know, Israelis don't think they're the bad guys. Palestinians don't think they're the bad guys. The people who support Israel don't think they're the bad guys. They don't think that nobody in that situation thinks they're the evil person over the other. I'm not saying that justifies their actions, right? But it allows you a certain way to be like, okay, well, now we can actually come to a conclusion. If we just assume that one side is completely evil and the other one isn't, you'll never have a real resolution when it comes to trying to actually solve this problem. Now, we have a lot of questions here in the chat where we are about 2 minutes away from the town hall. What do you want to do here, Pasta?
Well, let me just make one comment, too, while we're getting ready, too, as well. I think that also kind of plays into what's going on with the Trump crowd. I was at a Kerry Lake event, which is pretty much a Trump event, and I was like one of the youngest people in the room, 1,000 people. They're not hitting the younger people and whatnot, and too, because I think they got people stuck in their ways, people who are going to support Trump no matter what. But even the conservatives and the populist right who believe in closed borders, and now with Trump going, and we're not going to let God-hating communists come into this country. Socialists and Marxists will no longer be allowed. Like he says stupid shit like that, which drives the libertarians crazy, which drive the progressives crazy, which drive me crazy because I believe it's just kind of fishing for the low, dumb fruit. But they believe, conservatives and populist right, believe that too many people are coming into this country and taking away resources from veterans, taking away jobs from Americans. That's what they really believe. Now, they're wrong, and they also, because I think we can have plenty of, if we had some real leadership in this country, man, we can have so much of our own fruits and vegetables just grown. There's so much open land that's not even being used. You know what I'm saying? We can have jobs if we just decided that we weren't going to let our oligarchs take every single piece of industry and ship it off to Indochina and, you know, for cheap labor, and we can make stuff here again and, you know what I'm saying, and fix things here again. We can have enough jobs for all and everything, but we also got to look at the fact that why are they coming? And I've done several shows with conservatives about this, and they keep on agreeing with me. Yeah, I don't believe we should be over there and kind of forcing them, you know, to do something. But when they get here, they get all these free things. No, we're in these people's countries. All these bases are there. We're overthrowing their governments so we can have a puppet government in most cases. What happened in Guatemala this last weekend, Sunday, with the election, where they left the indigenous candidates off the ballot because they knew damn well they were going to go take that banana back and nationalize it, and they're going to have to do the whole same thing the coup did, CIA did years ago. So now they just helped them by leaving them off the ballot. You know what I'm saying? So even though they are wrong in a lot of ways, they think they're the good guy. I know I took the long way home, but they honestly believe they're the good guy. And Kennedy can speak to those people, and I think he can win a lot of those people, where Cornell is not showing that he's ready to do that, even though he says he wants to go there. And don't get me wrong, Cornell taught me to speak to everybody, but he's got to step up his game. So
to be our leader.
That's well timed because the town hall is just starting here.
Let's do it.
At least I think it is. There we go.
I'm
Okay.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I'm running for president of the United States.
All right, this is it.
This campaign is about
This is it, yeah. Let me ask you something. Are you okay with pausing if you want to make a comment or something on something outrageous that was said?
I'm going to take notes so we can do them during the commercial breaks. That'd be the best.
That'd be the best during commercial breaks.
But if you got a desire to say something really strong, jump in there, man. You know?
My uncle had a vision.
No problem. I prefer that too.
What your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
A vision of racial harmony, of peace in the world, and of honest government.
Or will his own controversial positions stop him?
I'm accused of passing misinformation on the side that shows that autism is caused by vaccines. There's over 100 studies. Wi-Fi radiation does all kinds of bad things, including causing cancer. There seems to be an almost frantic need to discredit me. I would urge people to listen to my own words.
Tonight, live across America, we welcome you to the RFK Jr. Town Hall.
Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has his sights set on something that hasn't been done in modern U.S. history: beating the sitting president for his party's nomination for the White House. And so far, he's off to a solid start, polling at 15% against Joe Biden in a recent Emerson College poll. His connection to what is akin to American political royalty is right there in the name. RFK Jr.'s statements, however, on issues like vaccines and public health have critics calling him a conspiracy theorist, and others asking if he is the right person for the most important job in our nation, possibly the world. Still, Kennedy believes it's his ability to take on that established power that American voters want. And that's why tonight is about you, the audience. It is your chance to ask questions and hear directly from Kennedy about the issues that matter most to you, live and unedited. And no topic is off limits. We've brought together Democratic and independent voters right here in Chicago, as well as in New Hampshire and South Carolina, the first states to cast their primary ballots in 2024. But first, everyone, please welcome me in joining Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to the stage. That is a warm Chicago welcome. Let's get this part out of the way. Your voice is raspy. Why don't you explain to our audience why?
I had a very, very strong voice till I was 46 years old. It was unusually strong. And I was, even at that time, I was making a lot of my income doing public speaking, and I could speak to large halls without any amplification. And then in 1996, when I was 42 years old, I got struck with a disease, a neurological disease, an injury called spasmodic dystonia, and it makes my voice tremble. And I actually, at the time, I didn't know what was wrong with it. But when I would go on TV, people would write me letters and say, "You have spasmodic dystonia, and you should see Dr. Blitzer, who is the physician who was most famous for treating it." And I ultimately went to see him, and he confirmed that I had the diagnosis. So it makes it, I think it makes it problematical for people to listen to me. I cannot listen to myself on TV. I will never listen to this broadcast, and I won't listen to any. So I feel sorry for you guys having to listen to me.
All right.
But I'll say one other thing, that my throat was much worse. And I went to Japan with Cheryl about 6 months ago and had a novel surgery that they only do in Kyoto. And it made my voice much better, which you probably won't believe, but it was much worse than this before. So.
Okay. Well, we have a lot of questions tonight for you from our audience. Let's get started. Before that, though, I want to say you're asking Democratic voters in this room and across the country to do something that hasn't been done in 167 years in this country, to vote out a president of their own party. Not to mention replace him with somebody who hasn't even held elective office. Why should they take that chance?
Well, I'm running because I feel like my party has lost its way. That the values that my uncle represented, my father represented when they were Democrats, have been neglected, let's say. And I want to try to bring the Democratic Party back to those values, the values that were, in favor of focus on the middle class in this country, focused on labor, on racial, on the well-being of minorities in this country, focused on the environment, particularly on civil liberties and freedom of speech, which the party seems to have forgotten about. And the party traditionally was anti-war as well. My uncle, President Kennedy, was asked by his best friend what he wanted on his epitaph, on his gravestone, and he said he kept the peace. He said the principal job of an American president is to keep the country out of war. And the Democratic Party has represented those views since its inception. And I think, particularly what we're doing now in Ukraine is a departure from that. And I don't mean that, I'm very, very sympathetic to the Ukrainian people, and I am not sympathetic to Putin. who invaded Ukraine brutally and illegally and unnecessarily. But we have neglected many opportunities to settle this war peacefully. And by the way, my son, Connor, went over to the Ukraine and fought for a special forces unit. He was a machine gunner, and he fought in the Kharkiv offensive. And so myself and my family are very sympathetic to the Ukrainian people. I think the way that we have conducted the war is bad for the Ukrainian people, is terrible for the Ukrainian people.
This is a story that's been very much in the headlines this week with the failed rebellion in Russia by Putin's own mercenary henchman, Yevgeny Prigozhin. The world held its breath because Russia has more nuclear weapons than any country on the planet. And I want to take us to our first question from Tiani in Manchester, which is about Russia. Tiani?
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. I have heard and read that you believe that Russia has acted in good faith towards trying to resolve the war in Ukraine. And I'm wondering if that is actually your position, and how would you bring peace to the region without emboldening Putin and threatening democratic self-government around the world?
Well, that is a bit of a misstatement of what I said. What I said was that in April of 2022, the war began on February 24th, 2022. In April, there was a peace outreach by Putin and Zelensky. And they actually signed a peace agreement. And at that time, and Boris Johnson was dispatched by the White House to sabotage that agreement. The Russians were acting in good faith. After signing that agreement, they were actually withdrawing troops from the area around Kiev. So it was clear that they were operating in good faith at that point, and we were not operating in good faith. We should be trying to settle this war through diplomacy. Since then, there have been 350,000 Ukrainian kids that have been killed, and we have turned that nation into a proxy war between Russia and the United States. And by the way, we were told this was a humanitarian exercise. If it was humanitarian, it means reducing bloodshed and shortening the conflict. But when President Biden was asked, why are we over there? He said, for regime change of Vladimir Putin. In April of 2021 or 2022, his defense secretary, Lloyd Austin, said that the reason for America's presence in the Ukraine is to degrade the Russian military and exhaust its capacity to operate anywhere in the world. That is the opposite of a humanitarian mission. That is a mission about a war of attrition in which the people who are dying are Ukrainians.
But when you say you would negotiate a solution, what does that look like? Do you award President Putin of Russia part of Ukraine?
We know what the solution would look like because the Russians have agreed to the solution twice. Once they agreed to the Minsk Accords, and the Minsk Accords, which were agreed to by Germany, by France, and by Russia, said maintained Donbass as part of the Ukraine. By the way, the Donbass voted to leave the Ukraine 90-10, 90% to 10%.
Are you talking about the elections last year?
No, the early elections, and Putin refused to take them. So Putin did not. But let me finish this. The Donbass or the Minsk Accords, which all those countries agreed on, and then in 2019. Zelensky ran for president for the first time. He's a comedian and actor with no political experience. He won on a peace platform with 70% of the vote. His campaign was, I will sign them and ratify the Minsk Accords if I'm elected. And as soon as he got elected, he pivoted. Why? Because of US pressure from the neocons, from Victoria Nuland and the neocons in the White House. They did not want peace. And because of pressure from ultra-nationalists within the Ukraine who said they were going to kill him if he signed the accord.
But if you negotiate with Putin right now and get him to stop his invasion, I mean, I know you said you're not defending Putin, but he's an accused war criminal. He poisons his enemies and imprisons his enemies. He's an autocrat. So if you award him part of Ukraine, what message are you sending to dictators and autocrats around the world who are looking to neighboring countries thinking, hey, I want some of that?
When my uncle was president and his military apparatus wanted him to go to war with Vietnam, with Laos, with Cuba, with the Soviet Union during the Berlin crisis in 1982, he said, you have to put yourself into the shoes of your adversary if we're going to have peace. You have to be able to put yourself in the shoes of the adversary and see the world from their perspective and recognize their legitimate security concerns. Now, we have, through a series of provocations, including unilaterally walking away from the two medium-range nuclear missile treaties with Russia, which we all signed, and President Trump and President Obama walked away from those. We promised in 1992 that we would, after the Russians made a huge concession to us of leaving 400,000 troops out of Germany, allowing us to consolidate East and West Germany under NATO control, which was an adversary army to them. And they said, the one thing we want from you is that you will not move NATO 1 inch to the east. And Secretary of State Baker said at that time, famously, we will not move NATO 1 inch to the east. Since then, we have moved it 1,000 miles to the east and 14 countries, and we put Aegis missile systems in Romania and Poland right near Russia's border. When Russia put nuclear missiles in Cuba, which is farther away than we now have, to Moscow, we would have invaded if they hadn't withdrawn them. My uncle was president then. We would have gone in. And my uncle knew why the Russians had done that. He did it because they did it. Khrushchev did it because we had put nuclear missile systems, Jupiter systems, in Italy and in Turkey. And my uncle, my father, met with Ambassador Dobrynin secretly and made a secret deal. If you remove your missiles now, we will take ours out of Turkey. So, the Russians have been invaded 3 times through the Ukraine. The last time they were invaded, the Germans killed 1 out of every 7 Russians. They destroyed all of it, 1/3 of Russia to rubble. They burned the fields. It's as if my uncle said this in his 1963 speech at American University. He said they destroyed the equivalent of destroying the entire part of the United States from the East Coast to Chicago. Imagine if all the wheat fields, all the forests were burned, all the cities reduced to rubble. That's what was done. They have a legitimate concern about us moving NATO into the Ukraine. We would never let them put missile systems in Canada or Mexico. We would invade if they did that. And we have to be able to put ourselves in their positions.
We have a lot of questions to get to, but that the vast majority of Democrats fully.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we should just pause it really quick and then we can maybe catch up during the commercials. What do you say a little bit? Because there's a lot to unfold there.
Yeah, go ahead. No,
I was gonna say you should go first if you have anything, because I just wanted you to do me one favor, Jose.
Yeah.
That if you were ever in a seat where you're getting questioned or interviewed and they say, "Well, Putin's an autocrat," or "Assad's really bad," or you just calmly tell that person, "Listen, I really wish we wouldn't have this dishonest conversation anymore and act like the United States isn't the ultimate aggressor with all the bases there." How many bombs does how many U.S. bombs does people how many bombs from the U.S. kill more humans every year than any other country, than Russia, for instance? Whose bombs kill more people, our bombs or Russia's bombs? Come on, let's just stop having this dishonest conversation where we say this guy's an autocrat, he's a thug, he's a criminal, whatnot. He's their president, that's their country. Why don't we just start with kind of like curtailing our own behavior? Will you promise me to say that or something like that?
No, I mean, I completely agree. Also, I mean, she's definitely setting him up with this axiom of, well, Putin's definitely a war criminal.
Yes.
How can you ever negotiate with a war criminal? I think he's handling it okay, pretty much. He's going back to his uncle about, he was dealing with Khrushchev and stuff, drawing the parallels, saying he would do the same thing, walk us away from nuclear war. Overall, I think RFK Jr. is doing a pretty damn good job so far.
Do you think that there's a little bit of fence sitting, though, a little bit holding back the fact that he opened it up to make sure that he called Putin's invasion illegal and that, it was brutal and whatnot, and kind of, even though he agrees and he lays it all out. And I love the fact that he names people like Victoria Nuland and all these other people, But he lays it all out of what we did. It's a proxy, and it's like, more existential right now than Ukraine versus Russia. This is NATO using fucking Ukraine as a proxy, excuse my French, to go after Russia. And he's even said that, that they want to exhaust the Russian military. I wish he would just say, because he has a little bit of double talk there, and he goes, well, they wanted to have peace, but you didn't want to end the war. Of course they didn't want a war. The United States wanted a war and wasn't going to stop until they got a war. And I wish he would just say that. You know what I'm saying? I wish some candidate would just say that. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
it's not like
he's doing a pretty good job, though, at talking about NATO expanding to the east, and they said they wouldn't. That's something that I assure you the people in the room have never been exposed to before. It's like dropping
Donald
in.
Trump, right? Trump, we got to end NATO. It's expensive. We shouldn't do it anymore. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he was the first to kind of throw that out there. That's what I was kind of like, what did Donald Trump just say? He's a Republican running as a Republican. He's talking about ending NATO. That's crazy and stuff. So no, I don't know. I mean, I think that part, but still the whole laying everything out, the history, we put missiles in Turkey. That's why they put missiles in Cuba. We did this and they did that. Like, we have to stop. We have to put ourselves in their shoes, and being able to hit back to the old Kennedy line. I know there's I don't usually like to talk about, color of people's skin, but there's a lot of white people out there in America like, oh my God, he's talking about JFK. This guy's, it's going to take off for him because he's so knowledgeable and he just answers honestly from where he's at. But I still don't, and maybe that's me, I just don't like the little still holding back with Putin's a thug, Putin's a gangster. Not because I like Putin. It's just because if you really want to sit down and negotiate peace and denuclearize, you don't want to call your enemy an asshole. You can say I disagree with him, but who are we to say we disagree with him when it was us, our military forces, our deep state, our government made sure they had a war with him?
I mean, he's trying to get votes. Okay, the crowd is clearly already opposed to him with the war. He's trying to win over the audience. He can't just come in there saying you're all wrong and I'm right. He has to kind of build up to it.
Well, I think it's because Americans still have that empire education and they still believe that we're Captain America and the good guys.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't want to let go of that.
I think this is overall a net positive, though. I do think he's going to change some minds in that room.
Me too. I think so far it's great. He's hitting the things, but now she's coming with the Democrat question.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right. Should we keep going?
Yeah.
And consistently have supported President Biden on his support of Ukraine in this war. You seem to be out of step with the voters of the party that you're asking for.
That doesn't make it right, Elizabeth. That does not make it right. We need to be a moral nation. We need to restore our moral authority around the world. If every Democrat is against me on that, I'm still going to say it. I'm going to tell people the truth. And our leadership.
And you think giving part of Ukraine to Putin is restoring our moral authority?
I didn't say giving part of the Ukraine to Putin. Putin agreed originally to leave Ukraine alone if we sign the agreement. So, Putin was not demanding any part of Ukraine, even though the ethnic Russians voted 90 to 10 in the Donbass to join Russia. He said no. Oh, I don't know what the negotiation would look like exactly, but I know what they agreed to before, and it was a reasonable agreement. They just did not want NATO to go into Ukraine, and we said we don't care. By the way, when we originally said that we were going to do this, George Kennan, who is the most important diplomat in American history, he was the architect of the containment policy after World War II. He is a deity in American statesmanship. He said, if you go into the Ukraine, you're going to force the Russians to have a violent response. William Perry, who was Bill Clinton's Secretary of State, said, if you go into the Ukraine with NATO, I'm going to resign because you are forcing the Russians to retaliate violently. And William Burns, who is now the head of the CIA, was then the U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union, said the same thing. He said, you cannot move NATO into the Ukraine because it is going to force the Russians to retaliate violently. And he said, he called it a red line. He said, if you cross that red line, Russia is going to have to go into the Ukraine.
There you go.
All of us
knew
what
that. You wanted.
All of our diplomats knew that. And the comic book depiction that the American people have been told by their leadership. I want to tell you something. The seats that you're sitting on today, you know who first had put those seats in here? The very seats you're sitting on. Donahue, Phil Donahue. Phil Donahue was the most important, the most popular daytime host. And do you know what happened to him at the height of his popularity? He told the truth about the Iraq War. He said there are no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. 2 days later, he lost his job. And that's why those seats are empty. So we have to, and now we all know he was right. So what I'm saying today, I know 10 years from now, everybody's going to understand this is the truth. We have been lied to by our press, by our government, and we need to start hearing the truth, and we need to stop paying attention to these comic book depictions that say there's bad guys and good guys, and America's always the good guy, and we never make mistakes. We have to understand there's nuance, there's complexity in our relationships, and we need to be able to put ourselves in the shoes of our adversaries if we're going to have true peace in the world, which we all want.
All right, this takes us to a question from Sandy Muller, a stay-at-home mom in Chicago. Might be interesting given what you just said.
Holy
that was good.
Frigging cow.
Yeah. That's exactly. You see, everybody keeps saying, well, why is RFK Jr. running as a Democrat? Because the Democrats don't believe the same thing he does, right? I see, when it comes to elections, the thing I hate about it is that it's prostitution. It's, no, vote for me because I'm more in tune with what you want. Well, how about somebody who tells you what you need, not exactly what you want?
Yeah,
you know, and RFK Jr. is out here saying to his voter base, listen, we were lied to. We were lied to about Iraq. We're being lied to about this right now, which is exactly why you should support me, because I'm willing to tell you the truth, not what you want to hear. You know, and that Phil Donahue reference was just like on point.
Sneaking in the Phil. And what happened? He was right. And, they fired him for saying it. You know what? That message of, if I got to stand alone, if all the Democrats don't want to come with me, I'll stand alone. I'll still say it. I'll stand for peace. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. Oh, that was so great. There was so many great points there. That's what we needed there, and we need to hear it. And this comic book mentality where we think, what did I say? We always kind of acting like we're Captain America and shit, because we're always right and they're always wrong. People need to stop that stuff. And that was kind of like, this kind of reminds me of that moment in, I don't remember, with Donald Trump in South Carolina. There were no weapons of mass destruction. They knew, they lied. The Middle East is disabled. It was awful, and they knew. And we're sitting there. I'm sitting there as a leftist going, holy cow, waiting for a Republican to say that against the other Republicans for so long. Well, the other Democrats ain't on the stage with him, and he's just going to keep throwing this to them. If I got to stand alone on this, I'll stand alone on this. This was wrong. This is great. This was very good for him.
Yes. No, I completely agree.
A combative host, right? A host that's kind of trying to frame him as like, well, you can't do this. This Putin's auto. He's an autocrat. How can you do that? Like, he's taking it head on. I like that. Also, I don't think they're going to do commercials. I think they're just going. All right. Looks like people will be getting caught up.
All right, no problem. Should we keep going?
Keep going.
Your father and uncle were heroes in the Democratic Party. Would they be considered Democrats today? And are you shocked by how you're being treated by the Democrats and their media?
That's a good question.
I'm not happy about it, but I'm not shocked. I know, people get subsumed in orthodoxies. I believe that the values that I am trying to promote are the exact values that my father and my uncle would have promoted. And I've, written books about my family. I've studied them. I have, the more that I've studied my family, the more I've written and researched them, my uncle and my father, the more proud I am of them. And I have devoted my life to promoting the same kind of values that I think they promoted. And I'm trying to, one of my purposes in running is to remind the Democratic Party of, what we are supposed to represent and what we've always represented. And, people have said to me, why don't you run as an independent? And I say, because I'm a Democrat. This is who I am. This is my identity, but I want my party back. I want my party to be the party that I grew up in, the party of John Kennedy, the party of Robert Kennedy, the party of FDR and Harry Truman.
You say that you're a Democrat, but you're getting a lot of support from a lot of leading voices on the right, like Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, former President Donald Trump. Many Democrats fear that you're a spoiler in the race, that you will damage President Biden in the primary and grease the skids for former President Trump to return to the Oval Office. This week, former President Trump said about you, Kennedy is smart and he's a common sense guy. What kind of man do you think Donald Trump is?
Well, here's what I'm not going to do in this race. I'm not going to attack other people personally. I don't think it's good for our country. And I think, what I'm trying to do in this race is bring people together, is to try to bridge the divide between Americans. And guess what? When my dad died and we took this train ride from, this 7.5-hour train ride that was supposed to be 2 hours, and I was with him when he died in Los Angeles. And then we brought his body from New York, Penn Station to Union Station and Washington, D.C. And it was a 2.5-hour ride, but it took 7.5 hours because there were 2.5 million people on that train track. And it was the cross-section of America, all of the major urban stations in Trenton, Newark, Wilmington, and Baltimore. There were Black Americans singing Battle Hymn of the Republic. There were whites in the rural areas who are holding up signs, "Goodbye, Bobby, pray for us, Bobby," American flag, standing, saluting. 4 years later, and they have supported my father in the primaries in 1968. 4 years later, in 1972, they were not supporting my father, and they were not supporting George McGovern, who was aligned with my father on all these issues. Instead, the vast majority of them were supporting George Wallace. And my father was able to harness these populist energies. In the last day of his life, he won the most rural state in this country, South Dakota, and the most urban. He was able to bridge the divide among people who would otherwise be Republican, but wanted somebody who was common sense, who was able to appeal to their idealism, who was able to find the hero in each of them, who was able to get them to transcend narrow self-interest and see themselves as part of a community and part of this, incredible American adventure in modeling self-governance for the rest of the world. And so I'm proud that President Trump likes me, even though I don't agree with him on most of his issues, because I don't want to alienate people. I want to bring people together. I'm proud that all these people like me and that I have independent supporters and Democratic supporters, and that I'm able to bring a lot of people. Every Democrat says, I want to end the polarization. But how do you do that without talking to people who don't agree with you? How do you do that without appealing to people? My purpose is to find the issues, the values that we have in common, rather than, focus on the issues and the personalities that keep us all apart.
As a lifelong Democrat, as you just said very passionately, will you pledge to support whoever the Democratic nominee is, whoever it is, whether it's you, whether it's President Biden?
Oh, of course I'm not going to do that.
Oh,
I'm not going to do that. No, of course I'm not.
If you don't get the nomination, you won't support President Biden?
I don't know what I'll do. Let's see let's see what happens in this campaign. Let's see, if people are living up to Democratic values and having debates and having discussions and, talking to each other, but I'm not going to buy.
And if you feel that's not happening, would you then support a Republican or run as an independent?
You know what? My plan is to win this election, and I don't have a plan B.
Okay.
No, it's true. You don't ask Muhammad Ali, what are you going to do when you lose to fucking, oh God, why is it Sonny Liston? What are you
George Foreman.
Yeah, or George Foreman. What are you going to do when you lose to? It's like, come on, you can't say that. As I was like, well, when I lose, hopefully I'll fight, Sonny Liston.
Joe Frazier.
Oh, Frazier.
Hold on. You got to be happy, Jose, that he said, of course I'm not going to commit to doing that. Everybody's been going, dude, he has to support the Democrat no matter what. No, he doesn't. He didn't sign no pledge. And even if he signed that fucking pledge, he can still fight against it. Say, no, they didn't honor their end of the bargain. So I'm not I'm not honoring that. I'm going to run as an independent or whatever, right? Let's say he does that.
Yeah.
They'll have to kick it to court. They're not going to be able to stop him. And secondly, it's the sore loser laws which he has to pay attention to, right? Like if you run in Florida, I believe as a primary as a Democrat, you can't run as an independent if you lose the primary or some stuff like that. There's laws like that. That's what we have to pay attention to. But I'm glad he said that stuff. And at the end of the day, he knows RFK takes votes away from Trump. Cornel West takes votes away from Biden. If RFK drops out, even if he endorses Biden, 90% of his people are not voting for him. That's why he said that there. He knows where where he can pluck from. Independents and some from the right. Those are the most fruitful for him right now, especially on his COVID protocols. While he's better than Trump on that issue.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, this is a good interview for him right now. I like this. He said, plain and simple, Jose, I ain't committing to supporting any Democrat. I don't know what I do. I plan to win. Let's go. Next question.
Exactly.
We are in Chicago, which will be the host to the Democratic National Convention next summer. It is also where President Biden came today to unveil his economic blueprint. He's calling it Bidenomics. The economy is a huge issue with voters of all stripes.
I'm sorry, Bidenomics?
Yeah, that's the new thing they rolled out today. You didn't see it?
Oh my fucking God.
He says it's not trickle-down economics, which is Reagan's thing, trickle-down economics, right? To now it's Bidenomics, and it's working.
Oh, God.
Stripes across the country. And that leads to our next question from George, a home builder and contractor in the Chicago area. Hi, George.
Hello. Everywhere I look, prices are sky high, from gasoline to groceries to building materials. Inflation and the uncertainty which it brings with it is damaging our economy. What is your plan to reduce inflation?
That's a real American with a real question.
Thank you, George. I have a long-term plan and a short-term plan, but the current plan, which is to raise interest rates dramatically, and to end the quantitative easing, I think is really doing tremendous damage. I was in Cleveland yesterday meeting with African-American business people in a community called the Lee Harvard community. And one after the other, they were getting up and telling me, one of them was a woman who had operated for 4 generations, 80 years, a sausage company that was very, very successful. She just had to, and it was bringing lots of prosperity to her community and lots of jobs. She just had to close it down because she couldn't get a bank loan. She couldn't get a bank loan because the interest rates are high, and the little banks, the ones that will loan to small businesses, their treasury bills have now been degraded in value, and they're scared about their targets for takeover. Their stocks have dropped 80% because of the heightened interest rates, and they're not loaning money anymore. And there's no money available to people who need it. And so, what we've done, we've sandbagged Americans. You're right. And why do we have inflation? We have inflation because of the continuous wars.
Wait, what specifically would you do to lower inflation?
Well, number one, I'm going to wind down the American empire and start. We've spent $8 trillion on the Iraq war and the wars that followed. And we spent $16 trillion on the pandemic. On the lockdown. The lockdown cost us $16 trillion, and we got nothing for it. We got nothing for the Iraq war. We end up killing more Iraqis than Saddam Hussein.
But
I'm
talking about what people are in the grocery stores tonight. What are you going to do to bring down the prices of the food and the gasoline that they're paying for? In the immediate future.
Well, the only way that we can do that is by reducing inflation. And inflation is not going to be reduced overnight. What we need to do is stop spending money on things that we can't afford. We're borrowing now $1 billion a day from the Chinese and the Japanese in order to fund the debt. The debt this year is going to cost us $660 billion, more than $500 billion just the service on the debt. We're not going to end that problem overnight, but we got to recognize that we've got to stop. We've got to stop. We're sending $113 billion to the Ukraine. The entire budget of CDC is $12 billion. The budget of EPA is $12 billion. Well, 57% of Americans could not put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency in their family. 25% of Americans are hungry. Oh, I have a friend who was on food stamps. He's a commercial fisherman. He's worked his entire life, worked to the bone, created a business, gave it to his son-in-law. And he was injured. He's on permanent disability. He was getting food stamps, $283 a month. And those food stamps are now worth a lot less because the inflation from paying for the wars caused 76% rise in dairy, milk, and eggs over the past 2 years. On March 1st, he got a robocall from the government saying that his food stamps are being cut by 90%. So he was getting $283 a month, which you can't feed yourself on $9 a day. He's now getting $23 a month, trying to feed himself on 80 cents a day. That same month, 30 million Americans got that call that month in March. Another 15 million had their Medicare cut. That same month, we printed $300 billion to bail out the Silicon Valley Bank, and we topped off Ukraine at $113 billion. Oh, we have money, plenty of money for the big shots who need their bank bailouts and for any war that comes along. But if you took that $113 billion that we've given to the Ukraine,
here we go,
and spent it here, we wouldn't have to cut $1 from food stamps for that 30 million Americans. And we're acting like an alcoholic who's, behind on his mortgage, and he's taking the milk money and buying rounds for strangers at the bar and thinking he's making permanent friends. And all of these money that we're spending on the military is not making us safer, and it's not making us friends abroad. We spent $8 trillion on these wars in Iraq during that same, and Yemen and Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Libya and Syria. And that same period, bombing bridges, ports, airports, hospitals, universities. That same period, the Chinese spent $8 trillion building ports and schools and hospitals and roads. And they are now eating our lunch abroad because people love them in Africa, Latin America, and Asia, because they like them a lot more than sending weapons and holding a gun at their head. We need to change that.
And we have a question on China later on the show. We have a lot of questions that we need to get to. We're going to take a break, though, because coming up next, immigration in the U.S. border was the most frequently asked question we got from our audience. We'll have
of course
Mr.
it
Kennedy's
was.
answers to that and much more after a break.
I hope he goes to Latin America, dude. That is so great. Oh, dude, like that, and once again, here's the thing. RFK's not going to win. It's a fixed system. It's going to take all these people's money. I don't care. Listen, what politicians are out there saying that? Now, Cornel West comes along and says this too as well, and this is where he goes, I'm vying to be the head of the empire so I can dismantle it. That's what he said. Great line, Cornel West. Here's what freaking RFK did, and he was going to say, I'm staying on point, even when he got interrupted, like, well, what are you going to do to fix that? What are you going to do to fix that? No, listen. I'm telling you where the money's coming from. We spend billions and billions of dollars every year, if not trillions over the past couple of years, abroad on the military-industrial complex. That's where that money is. We're going to bring it home. There's millions of ways to spend it here that will help Americans out. You don't have to just give it out like, what do you call it? And all just like food stamps and whatnot, which you should pay for those things. You should pay for people to be poor, but you can give loans out there, governmental loans. You can have infrastructure. You can have all these, you don't want to just turn it into a social welfare state. You can find other ways to get people jobs if you have that money here. And he's telling you exactly where it's coming from. So even if he doesn't win, that's a great talking point. And to say, you want to talk shit about the Chinese all the time? Look what they're doing every year. Shut your mouth about the Chinese. Let's fix our problem here.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, buddy.
No, listen, this is why I have you on. I know you're going to provide excellent commentary. Jimmy Dore has this great bit that I think RFK Jr. touched upon a little bit. He says, for the money we put into Ukraine, only like 1/10 of it could be used to stop homelessness. I think like $15 billion could end homelessness in the country. Yeah. And Jimmy Dore has this great bit where he says, for the money we put in for Ukraine, we could end homelessness and then for some reason bring it back and then end it again, and then bring it back, and then ended again 3 times over with how much money
Yeah.
we've given to Ukraine. I was definitely one of the people affected by the food stamps being cut. I know they reduced it. It was a little rough. I mean,
I was looking for a
RFK's
different word to say social welfare. Like, I didn't want turning it into welfare state. I think that's I was fishing for something else, but it does. And I didn't mean to kind of like take a jab anybody out there. Anybody who needs this stuff deserves to use it. But if you can find a way where you can put money where you can get off those food stamps and shit, right? Isn't that what we should be doing?
No, exactly. That's exactly right. And the thing is, I wish he would say, we would make our country more productive again, because that's the best way to get people off welfare. People shouldn't be working these kind of courier type jobs, where they, have to do Uber just to get by. People should be working in places that can keep their dignity in, making parts that will be used in buildings, infrastructure, right? Building hospitals and schools and housing, right? You can give people jobs that give them dignity to want to actually be an American. Not, oh, here I go again, clocking in the old 9 to 5 just to survive, right? There was a time during the Roosevelt administration, this is why I love FDR. FDR gave people hope. If things weren't good, but people at least could get up, have a job that they felt proud to have. And I think that's where RFK kind of needs to put more of his chips in. Hold on, I think we're back.
Good. He did mention China though, so that's something like what they're building. We need to get there.
Oh yeah.
The
Here we
vast
go.
majority of questions we got from our audience concerned border security. Mr. Kennedy, you were recently at the border. You toured it to get a firsthand look. You called it a dystopian nightmare and said that you would seal the border. And I want to go now to our first question from the audience, Josue from Chicago.
Hello, I'm the son of Mexican immigrants and the husband of a Honduran immigrant. And so my question is on immigration. With Congress unable to reach an agreement on comprehensive immigration reform in decades, what is your plan to address immigration?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and thank you, Josue. Is it Josue?
Okay.
Yes. I don't think that it's going to be possible to get an immigration reform package through Congress until we seal the border, because we've got now in the last 3 years, 7 million people have come across the border illegally, and the most disturbing part of me is I witnessed the humanitarian crisis, the cruelty to these people who are being brought to the border. They're being exploited, they're being extorted, they're being raped, they're being robbed. The cartels are now running U.S. immigration policy, and everybody knows that. There have been 9. We were told by the Border Patrol there have been 9 suicides of Border Patrolmen in the last year because they're so demoralized about what's happening. They are literally. It took me 3 days at the border to understand what's happening. The first night I watched. I got there at 2:00 in the morning. Stayed there until about 4, and I watched just hundreds and hundreds of people coming across. The first group was about 60 African men from West Africa, mainly from Cameroon. I thought I was going to see Central Americans and Guatemalans and Salvadorians, but I didn't. We only saw in the whole night there was only 2 families from Latin America, one from Colombia and one from Peru, and all of them had been brutalized and every penny taken away from them. The rest of them were from Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tibet, Nepal, Pakistan, and many, many from China. The cartels are now advertising all over the world that there's an open border, and they are bringing people in. They give them videos about exactly what to do. They fly to Mexico. They're given visas there, internal visas in Mexico. They go from Mexico City on a plane to Mexicali. They're loaded on fleets of buses and then brought to the border. They cross. The only role of the Border Patrol is to stamp them in and check if they have a criminal record. If they don't, they are brought to the airport and they are given a ticket to any city in the United States that they want to go to.
Well, they have to demonstrate need and apply for asylum.
No, they're given a court date. And the court date is a cursory court date. It's like an arraignment. And then their real court date, which they're not going to show up to, is 7 years later. So they're essentially given a 7-year pass to stay in this country.
So how would you seal the border?
Well, you know what? It's not that hard, because
how would you do it?
I would do it. I mean, there's a number of things that you have to do. I was against Trump's wall. But having seen it down there, I see that you were required to give a physical barrier during certain, not all the way 2,200 miles from San Diego to Brownsville, Texas, but certain highly densely populated
I really don't mean to pause, but I just saw my dad's in the chat, and I just wanted to say, hey, Dad. Sorry. Okay, let's keep going here.
Populated areas, you need a physical barrier. But in the hinterlands, in the wilderness areas, you can use sensors like they do in Israel, the ground sensors and towers.
Sorts of AI breakthroughs too. But you would rebuild, you would resume the building of Trump's border wall?
Well, a lot of it now has, Mayorkas, who's the DHS secretary, recognized that the gaps in that wall, that we shouldn't have left them. But it's not so much the wall, it's the other censoring devices that were all ripped up, which I'm very embarrassed to say by this administration, by the Democratic administration. And also the policies were changed so that the presumption is everybody gets in. And I witnessed it myself. And we can't have that.
Everybody's not getting in.
Yes, everybody gets in.
There are crowds of people waiting to try and apply through the new app that the Biden administration has set up. They're setting up.
As for legal immigration.
Oh, you're talking about illegal immigration.
I'm talking illegal immigration. Everybody gets in. I watched it. 7 million people have come in. Just the one little section I was at in Yuma, there's 350,000 people came here before. But I met with the Yuma authorities. I met with the hospitals. I met with the centers that take care of the immigrants who are beleaguered. I met with the Border Patrol and the sheriff, and everybody agreed it could be stopped. It could be wound down to what it was before this administration, which was about 25 people a day, which is not a big problem. But having now it's 300 to 800 a day. And that, no nation can survive if they can't protect their borders. I would, as president, I will expand legal immigration. I will make it easier, particularly for workers to come across on the H visas, and then and bring in and have an orderly system that benefits our country. Immigration is good for our country. This kind of immigration is unfair to everybody, and particularly to the immigrants that have been brought here. And then over the long term, the immigrants that have poured in from Latin America, a lot of them are coming up because of policies, wrongful policies that the U.S. has had, the drug wars, the austerity programs, the support of juntas, the war on the poor that we've maintained for so many years, and we need to change those policies as well.
You mentioned the drug wars, and fentanyl has been a scourge in cities and towns across America. 107,000 Americans died last year of drug overdoses. The vast majority of those people died from fentanyl overdoses. That leads us to our next question. Felicia is an addiction counselor. She lost her son 10 years ago to addiction. Felicia, hi, what's your question tonight?
You want to do a pause?
We are losing the war on drugs.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Well, because your dad's there, we have to address this real quick and stuff. Close the border is going to not be taken, lightly. There's going to be some pushback for that term over there right now, and what he's saying. I mean, he did kind of circle the wagons and eventually get back to the policies in Latin America. It's thundering out here. I hope the internet doesn't fall. But he did kind of circle back to the wagons and say, hey, listen, the policies in the United States, the foreign policies are also not helping. But that is not going to play well with a lot of people. He basically said, first thing we do got to close the border, and almost kind of like said that he would expand that wall that Trump built. You know what I'm saying? This is not gonna play well. And then he said he was giving a ticket to whoever they want, whatever city they want. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. How do you think that's going to play? I don't know if that's the border situation seems to be so different today than it was.
See, I'm in the epicenter of the immigrant crisis because here in New York City, and I'm not a fan of Eric Adams, but he is suffering out here with the immigrants coming in. You go to Times Square, man, they're all over the street. They're begging. They're filling up the hotels. It's a real problem because these people have nowhere to go, and they're asking to come to these Democrat cities. And that's, I think, what RFK Jr. is appealing to not saying he's right about this. I just think he sees the stress that a lot of local governments are suffering with right now with this, crisis of immigrants coming in. What the hell do you do with them? Like, what do you do with the ones that are here now? Do you just deport everyone back? I'd be interested to that's more what I'm interested in what he has to say. I mean, in terms of like people coming in at the border, closing it up, yeah, that's definitely going to cause a lot of feathers to be ruffled. I believe you can actually have a productive exchange of people coming in so long as you offer them some kind of ability to get educated and trained to do a productive job. Like, in other words, here's your citizenship, but you have to get trained to be an engineer or something that, because we desperately need infrastructure, like build
We got to get
maglev
those. We got to
trains.
get real infrastructure bills too, as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
He mentioned about he's got to always tie it back to empire and war. He mentioned like Africans and other people coming in, and the cartels are running. I would wish he would have tied the cartels to the CIA. But maybe that's what the cartel side business is right now. But when it comes to drugs, they're using DEA planes and CIA planes, and they're helping them get it out.
Or Wall
But
Street. Yeah.
he should kind of mention that the wars in the West, the wars that in Libya and all these, this is going to destabilize everywhere, and eventually they're going to end up in these countries that start these wars. You know what I'm saying? And they're going to go infiltrate in England and France and all in Europe, because all these wars over there, and even the Libyan situation, the Syrian situation spilling out everywhere, Greece, everything in Latin America he talked about spilling up over here. So I wish he would have tied that a little bit more together. But that's going to be a tough one. And you know what? He was like, no, I've been down to the border, man. Everybody gets in, and me and Fiorella have said before, there's no open borders. They're making it a little bit ridiculous. I still wish he would have stressed more about the situations why they're here, rather than he did say they got a plane ticket. He didn't mention a phone and a check. Thank God, like the populist right always they're gonna get all this stuff and Biden told them to come. But I mean, call it what it is.
No.
The policy has changed, and
well, look, I think RFK is the guy to get AMLO to pay for the wall.
Yeah, there you go. Well, here's
you
the
remember
thing.
this? Mexico's going to pay for the wall.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not paying for your stinking wall. Now, listen, this question right here is going to be about fentanyl. I'm going to bet, and if he's smart, he's going to tie back fentanyl usage to Big Pharma. What do you guys think out there? Is he going to do it? I say he is. Go ahead.
Also, I want to thank, there's like almost 200 people, at least on the YouTube stream. There's 20 on the Twitter. I don't know how many on Rumble. I don't know how many on your end. I want to thank all of you for coming on.
I got a buck and a quarter. And
buck and a quarter.
On my Rockfin Premium 25.
Nice. All right. Let's keep her going here.
What policies or ideas do you have that would change that? What's your platform on substance use and overdose? We need help desperately.
Yeah, and I have my own history of addiction. So I was an addict for 14 years, between starting one after my dad died till I was 28 years old, and I'm very active in recovery. I go to probably 9 meetings a week. And I spend a lot of my time thinking about it and seeing what works. And I take many people over my 40 years working these programs. I've taken hundreds and hundreds of people into different forms of recovery. And I have a very good idea of what works and a vision for what we need to do in this country. And we need to make addiction treatment easy, simple, cheap. A lot of the industry has devolved because of a variety of factors into almost a predatory industry, a lot of the addiction treatment industry. And I've seen how it works in other countries. I've seen this beautiful model that they have in Italy called San Patrignano, where there are 2,000 kids who work on a large farm and a healing center, and they grow.
It's a beautiful model.
It's good, and that's what we need to build here. And what I would do as president is I would decriminalize marijuana. I will make safe banking laws for people who are selling it, but I will tax it federally, and I will use that money to build these healing centers in rural areas, depressed rural areas all over the country, where kids can grow organic food and eat good, eat well, heal themselves spiritually, physically, and emotionally. And not only for fentanyl, but also for the many, many kids who are now stuck on SSRIs and are suffering other forms of depression. We need to start healing our country. Our country, has a form of kind of chronic inflammation, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. We need to start healing ourselves, and we need to be compassionate, but we need to be practical about it, and we need to make that a priority. We need to recover our children. We are all, one of my best friends lost a daughter 3 days ago. I lost a niece to a fentanyl overdose during the pandemic. So, I know what it's like. I lost 2 of my brothers. I know what the suffering that American families are enduring, and it is a high priority to me. And it's something that, for me, this is going to be my Peace Corps program. And my uncle had the Peace Corps. I'm going to build these rehab centers all over the country, these farms, healing camps where people can go, where our American children can go and find themselves again and come back, become contributing members to our society, and stop the mayhem and the carnage.
So is it going to be something like long-term recovery being there? And
well, San Padrignano is actually.
Is it going to be federally financed? Yeah, who's paying for?
Oh, like I said, I'm going to decriminalize marijuana on a federal basis, allow the states to regulate it, continue to tax it federally, and use those taxes to fund the recovery programs. And I would do the same thing for psychedelic drugs, which I do not think should be criminalized. And,
you would legalize psychedelic drugs?
I would legalize psychedelic drugs. Some form of legalization, but they should. There's so much I know personally, and I know, I've read the studies, and there's so many people being helped in different ways by them, and we have to make it easier, maybe to prescribe them, to give them through therapeutically. I don't know about just buying them in stores. I have to look at all that. But in one way or another, we need to make it easy for people to use them in ways that could benefit our children and could benefit everybody. So I've seen it in my own family, the benefits of it. And I've been in recovery for 40 years. I'm a person who would never tell you that the answer is a drug. Right? I'm a person who says, you never can fix what's wrong inside of you with something outside of you, with a substance, a powder, a potion, or a pill. It doesn't work. But I have seen, against everything that against all of my, training and indoctrination in that area, I've seen miraculous recoveries from psychedelic drugs, from PTSD, from veterans who have used it, from people who have suffered severe depression, OCD, many other injuries. And I'm not saying blanket legalization, but we need to make it easy for psychiatrists and therapists who are trained to be able to use this on their patients, and see if we experiment, see if we get good results.
We know that nearly 90% of people in this country who need help with substance use disorder don't get it, largely because they can't afford it, or they can't find it, or they're too afraid to ask for it. There's enormous stigma, which is a huge issue when people seeking help and getting help and finding help. In recent months, we've heard a lot of discussion about the son of the man you're running against, Hunter Biden. And I'm not asking about the questions about anything he might have done that was illegal, any crimes he may have committed, but I'm talking more about the way his addiction has been handled in the public dialogue. The fact that he's almost always labeled as, and I'm going to do it myself by asking this question, a crackhead. As a person in long-term recovery, as a member of a storied political family, I'm curious, and somebody who feels passionately about recovery and chipping away, I'm assuming, at the stigma surrounding substance use disorder and addiction. What do you make of the way his addiction has been bandied about?
Well, I'm not going to compound whatever problems that is by by sitting in judgment of. I mean, people have addiction problems. I'm not. I've never met Hunter Biden. I'm not going to put a judgment on him. I don't know anything about him other than the stuff I've read in the press. Addiction is a tragedy, and it's
It should never be
it's
weaponized.
cunning, it's incomprehensible, it's baffling, and it's really difficult to deal with. And I wish him and his family the best. God bless him, and I hope that he finds a road to recovery. That's all.
But do you wish that perhaps that wasn't becoming in some quarters what's perceived as a political weapon? It's, you can call for investigations until the cows come home, but to continually label and remind everybody that he was once addicted to drugs is like having that dragged out over and over again.
Well, I'm for de-escalating all of the poison and the hatred and the vitriol. So, whoever it is, whether it's against, President Trump or President Biden, you won't hear me saying like bad things about President Biden. I like President Biden. I've known him for probably 40 years. And this campaign is not about criticizing him. And I tried not to do that. If there's a policy I disagree with, like the war, like censorship, like the lockdowns, I'm going to criticize those. But I'm not going to attack him as a man. And I'm not going to attack President Trump because we've had enough of that. We need to figure out a way to start talking to each other and to start healing each other and stop, just hating on each other. This polarization is more dangerous than it's been in this country since the Civil War. And we need to figure out, ways to start talking to Americans with whom we disagree.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Pause.
there are many Democrats who
What do you got? What do you got? Something? Because
All right, look, there's a lot said there that I'm not a big fan of. For example, I don't know about. Look, I'm not a weed guy. I'm not a weed guy. Okay, I don't think it should be legal in the sense that like decriminalization is one thing, right? Where medical use and stuff. That's my take. I think it makes people slower and it doesn't allow them to be there. I think they're full of selves. That being said, I got nothing against people who do it. That's my take. And if he wants to decriminalize weed, I can live with that because, first of all, I don't think anybody should be in jail for smoking it or possessing it. I think it's wrong for people to be in jail for that. But the psychedelics thing is what really, really got me because, why? Now, he said, and maybe I was wrong about, maybe I didn't hear this right, but he said, I'm a Jack Daniels gal, someone said. But, he said the psychedelic stuff that he would also decriminalize that. Was he making the point that it could be used for ways to make people better?
Yeah. 1000%.
I mean, look, if I know
you haven't looked at that area yet, have you? You haven't gone there, huh?
Well, no, I know that there are positive effects to these things. I know there's positive effects to people who do like CBD and and some, I know that there are veterans out there who cannot sleep unless they have CBD gummies. That's a good thing.
This is psychedelics. This is like, psilocybin. This is like mushrooms, and he also mentioned the other flip side, the SSRIs, which are the like generically manufactured by the pharmaceutical industry. My biggest part of it was like, what about big pharma? I am for legalization of weed. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be a little bit weird when the federal government gets involved and, the way they're kind of making it in California now, they're kind of handed it over to big pharma, big marijuana that is, and they're closing the small places because they're allowing the state to kind of, do some really messed up things. And I think there has to be protection for the small guy. And I wish he would just, though, instead of like, and I like the whole fact, RFK had this meme that he he put up on Twitter, Jose, where it was like a cannon. It was a cartoon. And I was like, oh, finally he's taking the gloves off and going after Biden. Well, he took it down, right? So I don't know if Kucinich got to him or his campaign got to him. Say, listen, we're not doing that. We're not going after anybody personally. Just stay on topic, stay on policy. Well, he could have used this whole thing when they're talking about Hunter Biden to go, he should have took a shot. He goes, listen, I don't know Hunter Biden. I was any addict really hard. But the shame is that Joe Biden signed the crime bill, which put people in jail for doing much less things than his own son. And that's something he should have drilled home by using that. That's the shame of what's going on. I don't have to talk about Biden personally, but that crime bill, I mean, can you imagine if they held his son to the same standards, where would he be? But all in all, I hope he gets himself help and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
So I wish he would have done that. So, I mean, I think we're a little bit different there because I'm for legalization of marijuana and I am for using psychedelics. But the SSRIs, he pointed out, a lot of people don't talk about it. All the mass shooters, the majority of the mass shooters that have just happened in the last couple of years were on some form of an SSRI. You know what I'm saying? They were on these kind of medicines from Big Pharma that made them go a little cuckoo. He's addressed that, but he hasn't taken direct aim at Big Pharma here, which I thought he would do. So
I think the Hunter Biden thing is a cheap shot if you're running against Biden. I think you and I can make that point about Hunter Biden, but to go after someone's son, and listen, Seymour Hersh said this. He said that he actually had stuff on Hunter Biden before the laptop stuff, and he refused to publish it. You know why? Because dads will go to great lengths to protect their sons, okay? I'm pretty sure if somebody broke into my apartment right now, my dad would drive, an hour from where he is right now to come and save me, And I say that because I know he's still here. So anyway, let's keep it going here.
Yeah, let's keep it rolling.
All right.
To disagree with you on the subject of vaccines. So coming up, we're going to take some questions from our audience about childhood vaccines and your positions on that when we return.
Let's just. We don't need to. Is there anything else you want to say? I'll just get us back to.
No. I just, like I said, I get the whole thing about the son, but I think you should just use it to take advantage of going after that crime bill. You know what I'm saying? Like, say, I mean, can you imagine if he held, poor people to the same standard as his son to the same standard as he's put all these poor people in jail, people of color, and I'm saying all that and hit that. I wish he would have done that. He needs to take his gloves off a little bit.
No, I do agree with you on that. I just don't know if that's Kennedy's
Welcome
position.
Back to our town hall with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And Mr. Kennedy. One of the biggest controversies surrounding your candidacy is your stance on childhood vaccines.
Yep.
Nearly every scientific and medical organization, including the CDC, the FDA, the AMA, the American Academy of Pediatrics, all say you're wrong on this issue. This leads us to our very first question from our audience. It's Dr. Tariq Butt, who specializes.
I would ask you one thing. On what issue?
On childhood vaccines.
What about them?
And whether they ever cause autism or damage kids. They all say these vaccines have saved millions of lives.
Damage kids.
I don't think anybody has said they never have. There might be a child here, but overall, all those organizations say vaccines are safe and have saved millions and millions of lives. But let's get to our audience question from Dr. Butts.
Good evening. Eradication of chickenpox and polio from the US and many parts of the world is a direct result of regular vaccines. Measles, mumps, rubella, and many diseases are preventable. And there's little to no evidence of these diseases in vaccinated population. Your vaccine stance is dangerous to the health and well-being of millions. Medical experts are deeply concerned about your message. How can we help you to come to the side of science?
Wow.
What was the question? How can you help me come to my senses?
No. You are a very smart person.
Okay, so I think most people don't know what my stance is on vaccines. I've never been anti-vaccine, and I've said that hundreds and hundreds of times, but it doesn't matter because that is a way of silencing me. Using that pejorative to describe me is a way of silencing or marginalizing me. My position on vaccines, I think, virtually every American would agree with my stance on vaccines, which is that vaccines should be tested like other medicines. They should be safety tested. And unfortunately, vaccines are not safety tested. They're not, of the 72 vaccine doses now mandated, essentially mandated, they're recommended, but they're really mandated for American children. None of them, not one, has ever been subject to a pre-licensing placebo-controlled trial.
Yes, they have.
No.
Yeah, they have.
Okay, let me just say something. Dr. Fauci and many other people for many years said this, that Bobby Kennedy, when he says that, is wrong. So I met with Dr. Fauci in 2016, and I agreed to go on Trump's Vaccine Safety Commission, and I was with Aaron Siri and Lynn Redwood and a number of other people, and we said to him, can you show us one test from any vaccine, pre-licensing safety test? And he said, I'll send it to you. I can't find one now. He never did. So we sued him. We sued, Aaron Ziri and I sued HHS. And after a year of litigation and stonewalling, they said that they could not provide a single safety study for any vaccine that is on the childhood schedule, pre-licensing safety study. So anybody who wants to read that can go to to the Children's Health Defense website, and you can read HHS's admission that not a single one has ever been safety tested pre-licensing. Now, what I've said is other medicines are required to do that. And we should have to do that for vaccines. If I'm wrong, show me the test, show me the study. You won't be able to, because there are none. That means that we don't know what the long-term risks are, the risk profile of those products. And I'll give you and me, you mentioned chickenpox. So when CDC was thinking of recommending this chickenpox vaccine as mandating for children, they did a study, and the scientist they hired to do that study was a scientist called Gary Goldman, a contract scientist. And he did the study in an isolated place in California called Antelope Valley, a long-term study. And what they find is if you give the chickenpox vaccine, mass vaccinate with chickenpox, it stops chickenpox, but it causes shingles epidemics later on, which are 20 times as deadly as chickenpox. So nevertheless, despite those studies, we mandated for American children in this country. In Europe, they don't. If you go to the British National Health Service website right now, you can read on that where they say, we do not recommend chickenpox vaccines because it causes shingles epidemics later on. And that's the problem. You can't just look at, you can say that this product is going to prevent this particular disease, but you have to look at the long-term impacts. Vaccines, like other medicines, have injuries that have long diagnostic horizons and long incubation periods that if you do not do long-term studies on placebo-controlled studies comparing vaccinated populations to unvaccinated populations, you won't do it. Let me just give you one quick other example. The most popular vaccine in the world is the DTP vaccine, diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. We banned it, we got rid of it in this country because it was causing injuries, brain injuries, severe brain injuries or death to 1 in every 300 children. We used it in the 80s, and that's why there was all this litigation against vaccine companies that precipitated the passage of the Vaccine Act that then gave them immunity from liability. But in Europe, they don't use it. In America, they don't use it. But we give it to 161 million African children a year. So Bill Gates asked the Danish government to support that program and said it saved 30 million lives. The Danish government said, show us the data. He wasn't able to. So they went to Africa and did their own studies. And they looked at 30 years of DTP data. And what they found shocked them all. They found that girls who got the DTP were dying at 10 times the rate of unvaccinated girls. But they were dying of things that nobody had ever associated with the vaccine. They were dying of diphtheria, of anemia, malaria, bilharzia, pulmonary disease, respiratory disease, and pneumonia. And nobody noticed for 30 years that it was the vaccinated girls and not the unvaccinated girls who were dying. And what had happened is these girls were not dying of diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. The vaccine had protected them against those, but it had also ruined their immune systems. And they were unable to defend themselves against other just minor diseases that other kids who had hardy immune systems were able to fend off. So that's why you need these long-term studies. And that's why I'm worried that we don't do that here in the United States.
And we do have evidence of that, like there are clinical trials, randomized trial, and there's a difference between association and causation, right? Somebody can take a medication and get involved in a motor vehicle accident. It doesn't mean that, that is associated, but it was not caused by medication unless we get to the bottom of it. So many times we should continue to figure out ways to, for the safety of vaccines, of course, and medical community is always looking for that. But at the same time, like we can really come to agreement that vaccines are important. They do prevent those diseases. After all, smallpox was in the world, all around the world. It's not there anymore. So
Yeah.
there is evidence of that.
And then there's diseases, when we passed the Vaccine Act, when I was a kid, there was only 3 vaccines. I was compliant. But when we passed the Vaccine Act, it made vaccines very, very valuable. And all of a sudden, there was a gold rush to add a lot of new vaccines to the schedule for diseases that aren't even casually contagious, like rotavirus, like hepatitis B. Why are we giving hepatitis B vaccine to a 1-day-old child? Hepatitis B, the major vectors for that are it's sexually transmitted or by needles. Why would you give that to a 1-day-old child? It's really a profit motive. Now, you're right that correlation is not causation, but the Institute of Medicine has looked at the vaccine schedule and said in their 2011 report, there are over 150 injuries that are likely to be associated with vaccines that have never been studied. So it's the CDC's responsibility to do those studies, and they've been ordered again and again and again to do them, and they have refused. And that's wrong. We need an agency that is putting public health first and not pharmaceutical profits. You were talking about the opioid crisis. The opioid crisis, started with the oxycodone. Now it's fentanyl. But the same companies that got the FDA to lie to us about the addictiveness, lie to every doctor in this country about the addictiveness of oxycodone and get a whole generation addicted. Those are the same companies that make these, other products. And the 4 companies that make vaccines in this country, Merck, Sanofi, Glaxo, and Pfizer, have paid over $35 billion in criminal penalties over the past decade for lying to doctors, for falsifying science, for defrauding regulators. And we need to keep an eye on them. We can't just trust them. If they say it's a vaccine, we all trust it. We need to have actual science on it. And I think that's all I say. I don't want to get rid of vaccines. If you want to take a vaccine, you should be able to do it. But we need good science, and that's all I've asked for.
But what do you say to people? I mean, it sounds like you're saying that every scientist, every government, our governments around the world, doctors like Dr. Butts are all lying about vaccines.
I've never said anything like that.
The AMA, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the FDA says, and in fact, on its website, you can clearly see vaccines they go through 3 stages of FDA testing against double-blind placebos. They already do that testing for vaccines.
Elizabeth, you can say that. I'm telling you.
I'm not saying that. The FDA,
no, the FDA is not saying that.
Yes,
because
they do on their website.
They will not tell you that that there's any vaccine that has ever undergone a long-term placebo-controlled trial prior to licensure. They will not, because it's not true. And you can go to my website and see where HHS says, yeah, there are none.
Well, we have competing websites saying different things. Let me say
this. I'm not saying the AMA is lying or the doctors are lying. What I'm saying is the FDA does lie. And the FDA lied to us about Vioxx. They knew that the Vioxx was causing heart attacks, but they let doctors believe that it was a medicine that was good, beneficial for headaches and arthritis without telling them that they were going to kill them. And they ended up killing between 120,000 and 500,000.
All these doctors and all these scientists around the world who say vaccines are safe and have saved millions and millions of lives.
The same people said Vioxx was safe. The same people said opioids, that oxycodone was not addictive because FDA said it and they believe them. And that's the problem. We have a corrupt federal agency that's lying to the AMA, to all of those agencies and all of the doctors, and they believe them. But those agencies are controlled by pharma. That is the problem. And that's what I'm trying to end as president.
You know that your own family doesn't support, many members of your own family don't support your position on vaccines. Your brother, your sister, and your niece have all written an editorial saying on
Wow.
vaccines, Bobby is wrong. His work on vaccines is having heartbreaking consequences. What's your response? Your own family thinks you're wrong on
Does your family agree with everything that you said?
Definitely not. You got me on that one.
Let's pause. Let's pause. First of all, Jose, I wish these people would do their own goddamn homework. I know America's just catching up to this stuff, but crystal ball falling flat on her face when we're talking about vaccines. Megyn Kelly did the best interview in talking about this. Megyn Kelly did her homework before having RFK on to kind of push back and whatnot. Even going down to talk about it was the actual additives and the extras they were putting in with these vaccines, which were the harmful things, mainly the mercury and different types of mercury. But it's almost as if nobody's done their homework. They've just been told, that RFK is against vaccines to go after him there without doing your homework and understanding exactly what's going on. And this is vintage Kennedy over here. This is his area. He knows how to handle this. Could you imagine Biden trying to take these questions, Jose? Come on, corn pop, man. I mean, it would be ridiculous. And this is right here. He is shining in this moment when it comes to this right here. Why can't people see the benefit of RFK winning, whether or not he sucks on Israel, whether or not he'll never win again, he won't win because they won't let him. Why can't they see the benefit in this kind of conversation there, and then also starting to do their own researches and getting caught up on what's going on? This is about big industry, particularly big pharma, taking advantage and treating us like lab rats, injecting us with whatever and stuff. This book over here, it really explained to me medical colonialism, and that's what people have to understand, and how much control they have in an industry. And he says straight out, FDA lies. They've lied about this. They've lied about that. They don't care about you, and that's the problem here. And if you want to talk about this situation, and this is a very kind doctor, but who rebutted, well, hey man, let's just kind of that they can be worked well. I guess we can have conversations, but I don't think we should take away from the fact that, some vaccines are good. Look at these examples, these other vaccines. And this stuff happened how long ago?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Right? So I'm just saying this is it. I wish a lot of people, I wish they would do their homework. This is a little embarrassing over here. And then to try to go really low about even your own family, Jose. I say you're wrong on marijuana, buddy.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to say anything on the vaccines. Why? Because I had on Jason Ross yesterday. Somebody's on the Ukrainian kill list, He thinks RFK Jr. is wrong on the vaccine stuff. And it would be dishonest for me to ride the wave with you and be like, yeah, RFK is totally right. I don't know. I haven't done my homework. And it'd be dishonest for me to ride this with you. And I would need to investigate more what RFK was saying here, because she was saying, no, there are double-blind vaccine placebo tests. But then he said there's no long-term blind placebo tests, and as he was making he might be telling the truth on that. Again, I need to look into it more.
Do you know how much time? Do you know how much time in medical school a doctor spends on vaccines?
How much?
On average, 1 day. 1 day. It's not even part of their education process. You know what I'm saying? And he is right about one thing. There used to be 3 vaccines, but as soon as they had a law where they can allow these things to come in, here comes big industry, here comes big pharma, just juicing it up, and they don't give a damn. And a lot of stuff was proven from this particular COVID vaccine, you know what I'm saying, itself, where we had a lot of questions, and it's still, to this day, under emergency use authorization. So, I mean, I know what you're saying, and that is one of the areas that I was pretty much into, and I'm a science guy, but I know this much as far as the mandate thing goes. A vaccine is an unnatural way of tricking your immune system to fight off a potential virus that's out there. Nobody ever should be mandated ever to take something that's unnaturally going to trick your immune system, no matter what the hell is out there. And if you think that it's a public health industry and you think that the vaccine is going to save you, you have every right to take it. You know what I'm saying? The mandate part is what people they get away from, and they don't understand the basics of what's going on.
I hear you. And I will say, just because I'm on YouTube, streaming this on YouTube, you can get all your most up-to-date information on CDC.gov. You can no. It's okay. This disclaimer works,
Yeah.
Vaccines are completely safe and ethical for you. Vladimir Putin is a tyrant. We must support Ukraine. Okay, all right. You ready to keep rolling?
Safe and ethical. Go for it, baby.
But it does tee up our next question from Kellen here in Chicago. Hi, Kellen.
Hello, sir. Thank you so much for being here. As an undecided Democratic voter, I have a few concerns, and I'd like just to hear your thoughts on easing some of those concerns. We just heard about vaccines, that being one of them. Another one being that you have attributed a connection between 5G data and in quotes that it was designed, or that it will harvest our data and control our behavior, end quote. And that also.
Can I answer that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my concern about 5G is that the RF radiation from 5G is dangerous. It penetrates it disrupts the blood-brain barrier. It also is associated with glioblastomas and other cancers. And it causes a lot of other dramatic health effects. And there are literally thousands and thousands of studies in that. I've litigated on that issue, and I've won in the Federal Court of Appeals. So, you can say it's a conspiracy theory, but the Federal Court of Appeals, I also won a case on Monsanto and glyphosate that it caused non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that was called a conspiracy theory. What I've said about 5G is, yeah, it is dangerous. It is underregulated. Other countries regulate it much better than us. And we need to protect our children. We should not be having these antennas on elementary schools. We should be warning people appropriately. Do not put that cell phone next to your head. Because, we're seeing this epidemic now of glioblastomas, and almost all of them are connected to the year that you favor the cell phone with. Oh, there's study after study that shows that, and I'm in litigation on that issue right now. And, if we get a fair trial, we're going to win that litigation as well.
But again, you're a lawyer and an activist. You're not a doctor or a scientist.
Listen, we live in a democracy. We don't have a priesthood here. We don't have high priests who are telling us we're in charge of our own lives. And Americans need to do their own research. And, listen, people say trust the experts. That became a mantra during COVID. I brought over 500 cases, and almost all of them involved a scientific controversy. My job is to read science, to learn it, and to be able to read it critically. And every case I've ever brought, there's an expert on that side and an expert on this side. When we brought the Monsanto case, there were 3 experts from Harvard, Stanford, and Yale. And we had 3 experts from Harvard, Stanford, Yale, and they were saying exactly the opposite thing. Saying trust the experts to me makes no sense at all. Trusting the experts is a function of religion and totalitarianism. It is not a function of democracy. In democracy, we question everybody.
We have a lot of questions I want to get to, but before we do, I want to direct our viewers to our website to go deeper on the science of vaccines, as well as Mr. Kennedy's positions on everything from immigration to foreign policy. We have resources available for you online and encourage you to check them out at newsnationnow.com.
Basically, everything he said is a lie. Here's the truth at this website.
Children's Health Defense. And you can find the other side of the story.
Yeah, you got it in now.
The non-government science that often is paid for by the government, but then they deny and disavow afterwards. But you can read a lot more studies.
We have a lot more questions. A big issue here in Chicago and around the country is gun violence. And we have a question for you now from Nick here in Chicago.
So on May 30th of 2020, I lost one of my best friends, Chris Beatty, to gun violence. And also being a founder and CEO of a tech company that keeps people safe during marketplace transactions, I want to know, how are you going to use the federal resources to slow and or end the epidemic of gun violence in America?
SSRIs.
Yeah, thank you for that question. For me, it's a very tough question. And I lost my father to gun violence. I lost my uncle to gun violence, and and many friends. And so I'm aware and sensitive to the injury that can cause to generational injury that occurs from guns. We have a gun problem in this country. We have a Supreme Court now that has given a very expansive view of the Second Amendment. And I believe in the Constitution, including the Second Amendment. And practically, I do not believe that there is within that Second Amendment that there's anything that we can meaningfully do to reduce the trade and the ownership of guns. And I'm not going to take people's guns away. And because telling the people that I'm going to take their guns away is not practical. It's not. Anybody who tells you that they're going to be able to reduce gun violence through gun control at this point, I don't think is being realistic. And I think we have to figure out other ways to do that. I think we have to figure out other ways to reduce that violence. And we need to, and ultimately my hope is that we can bring Americans together, get them to trust each other, get them to trust their government again, and then we can work out, every American, whether they're Republican gun carrier or a Democrat who is, who believes that nobody should own guns. We all want the same thing, which is we want to keep our children safe and we want to keep our neighborhoods safe. And there are, I think we have to look at what the alternatives are for doing that. And, some of the things I've talked about are that we need to look at some of the other causes of the violence. One is the division among Americans and the hatred. We need to reduce that. The distrust of government, we need to reduce that. We also need to look at the contribution, particularly with the school shootings of some of these psychiatric drugs. And, I'm not saying they're causing it, but I'm saying there is evidence they are, and that evidence. Well, part of the evidence includes the fact that for SSRIs, almost all of them have on their manufacturer's inserts among the listed side effects are homicidal and suicidal behavior.
That doesn't mean antidepressants caused any of these people to commit mass shootings in school.
Of course it doesn't.
Okay.
But we ought to be looking at it, shouldn't we? Shouldn't we be looking at video games and cell phones and some of the social, some of the social media stuff? We should be looking at all these things, including the SSRIs. And by the way, there are studies out there that indicate a higher percentage of the people who committed these school violence were on SSRIs.
Yeah, well, there are also like tens and tens of millions of Americans on antidepressants who don't commit mass shootings.
Well, of course, there are people who smoke cigarettes and don't get cancer. So, but shouldn't we be looking? Shouldn't we be looking at those things? I mean, it's clear. Something happened in this country. Something happened that we can't really explain and that we need to explain. And NIH really ought to be explaining it to us, but it doesn't do these studies. It will not do the studies where there may be a big shot as the culprit. Why, when I was a kid, many of the schools that my friends attended had gun clubs in them. And the kids brought their rifles to school every day. And nobody was shooting children. No, and in all of human history, in all of the nations in the world, there's never been a time when people randomly went into a group of children and started shooting them. Why did this suddenly start? Why is it not happening in Switzerland, which has, a comparable number of guns per capita that we have?
No, we have far more guns
We have
per
far
capita.
more, but they have a lot of guns, and their last school shooting was 21 years ago. We're having them every 21 hours.
We have a few more questions we want to get to, but very quickly, in 10
Do
seconds.
you believe that we shouldn't even look at that issue?
I want to ask you about the fact that you're running for the Democratic nomination and 77% of Democrats support an assault weapons ban. Do you not support an assault weapons ban?
If we can get a consensus on it, if Republicans and Democrats agreed to it and it passed Congress, I would sign it.
Okay. We are going to take a quick break. The LGBTQ movement
close the volume
has
over
a
here.
question on where Democrats.
The LGBTQ movement's coming up next. Okay.
Oh yeah,
Folks,
yeah. That's
it's
coming.
funny
You
'cause-
know that's coming. You knew that was coming. The trans questions are coming and stuff. Gun violence he can get a little bit better on, but he did get back to the whole. A lot of there are tests that show that a lot of these mass shootings, these kids or these school shootings, the gunman, were on these SSRIs. You know what I'm saying? This is something my old partner Steve used to talk about a lot that a lot of people aren't talking about, like, when I talked to my mom about an SSRI, she was like, "What's an SSRI?" And I had to explain to her what it is, and these are these awful types of these drugs out there, you know what I'm saying, hallucinogenics of sorts. You want to go to like a 2-shot with us real quick before it comes back on?
Oh,
or-
yeah, sorry, yeah, okay, and folks, and it's also kind of funny every time I see, sorry, Jennifer
It's just
Garner.
distracting me. I can't.
Yeah, she's just so beautiful. I'm sorry.
I can't
Folks,
talk
we'll be
with her
back.
anymore.
It's funny because I see the views fluctuate every time we pause or there's a commercial. It's like a old school cable. You know how people would flip the channel when there's commercials to another show and then they go back. Yeah, folks. We'll bring it back. It's commercials. Trust me. We'll come back. But anyway, go on, Pasta.
And look, just like they were saying, there's people who take, certain medications that help them. Yeah, and SSRIs out there can help them too as well for certain people as prescribed. Right? I know I talk about opioids all the time. One of my favorite followers, and I'm not going to mention her name, she takes opioids on a regular basis because she needs to, because she helps, because she has crazy migraines. I'm not saying that these things shouldn't be used and cannot be used. I'm saying they shouldn't be used recklessly. That nowadays we get away from discovering the problems within inside. Like he said, I've been a recovery for 40 years. It was about me and my issues and dealing with them in the inside. No pill, no powder, no shot could help me. I had to figure out stuff for myself. And I think that should always be looked upon, not just the carelessness of giving the drugs away, because the drugs are given away because a lot of these doctors are getting kickbacks and they depend on it. I know when I used to be a caterer, and I used to work for these drug companies and stuff, they would go to these doctors' offices, give them a bunch of samples, and give them little kickbacks if they went to work for them, if they'd subscribed their drugs, if they gave their drugs out. So that whole industry has to be looked upon. That's all I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? So for people out there, they save lives. Of course they do. I know people personally who've been saved lives, but we can't get away from the fact that they've been used and given away recklessly. That the big pharma has done that. They've done it with opioids. And when the FDA said it wasn't going to be addicting, they flat out fucking lied. And that has to be taken into factor here. So, you know what I'm saying? A spoon could kill somebody if it's not used right. So, I mean, that's just the things we have to look at. This gun question was tough. He did say he would sign that assault weapons ban and stuff. But, and these questions he hasn't been pushed on these too hard. So it's going to be interesting as to how he addresses these. But he did say, I don't think that taking away guns is going to stop the gun violence. And that's the position he's holding.
No, and he's definitely right on that. Taking away the guns isn't going to solve anything. First of all, people aren't going to willingly give it back. Buybacks aren't going to work. It's a culture problem. I mean, you've had an increase in suicides and mental illness in the last 30 years. Some of it is it misdiagnosed or is it because of SSRIs, as you put in big pharma, inducing this into people? I definitely think that does play a role in it. But you have an ugly ass culture. I mean, let's just be for real. I mean, he said, shouldn't we be looking at the video game? Shouldn't we be looking at the social media? Look, man, Twitter, we have to admit some faults with Twitter here. The town hall's back. Twitter has porn on it, Oh, hold on. Here we go.
It's also economics too.
It's a
poor nation
whole-
is desperate
A
nation.
variety of questions in our last few minutes.
Pause
of
it
our
real
audience.
quickly.
We
I'm
can start
sorry.
with-
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying, you have a culture and economics, of course, where people don't feel hopeful anymore, or optimistic, and people have forgotten what the point of being a human being actually is. It's not getting up every day to slave away for your, overlords who you make money for. It's the old rhyme: boss makes a dime while I make a penny, or boss makes $1 while I make a dime. That's why I shit on company time, right? Those old adages. You have to remind people what it
that's
means
all
to
I
be-
want. Yeah, it's
to be
economics.
human,
Always goes back to economics.
Yes, and that is a Raphael, to whoever asked. Yes, it's from the School of Athens. So anyway, let's keep it rolling.
James from Charleston. He's a CEO of a social media consulting firm who has a question about the LGBTQ vote. James.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Mr. Kennedy, I have a question. You recently agreed and then withdrew that agreement to speak before a group named the Moms for Liberty. They are a right-wing group that would like to tell other parents how to do their own children, but you agreed to do that. You have mentioned your uncle and your father, but you've not mentioned Ted Kennedy, who I worked with in the United States Senate for 6 years, and his staff on these issues. There was no bigger champion or stalwart for LGBTQ equality than Ted Kennedy, the late Ted Kennedy, and you know that. Explain to me why, as a Democratic voter, I should ever support you in a primary against any other Democrat when you agreed to speak before a group that wants to ban my marriage and tell other parents how to treat their children.
I didn't speak in front of that group, and when somebody on my staff accepted that invitation, I was unaware of it.
I need to interrupt you for 1 second. As a former congressional staffer, if somebody who's elected blames staff, that's the wrong answer. You have to take responsibility for agreeing to speak before those groups.
Pasta, where are you? This is getting spicy.
I'm at the beginning of a campaign. I have no, long-term staff. We weren't allowed to even raise money until April 5th. So I'm scaling a campaign very, very quickly, and I accept a lot of invitations without the capacity to look into. And I know Teddy had, 86 members on his staff. But when, a member of my staff, through no fault of her own, who's I accepted that, and when I found out that that was their position, I declined to go. There's nobody. There will be nobody in the Oval Office who is more supportive of LGBTQ rights than I am. I was with Teddy campaigning in the Castro in 1980. It was the first presidential campaign that ever courted the gay vote. It's very important to me. It's a civil rights as important as the civil rights to any other group, and their civil rights my family has stood for, has fought for, and I will do the same. I made a mistake by accepting that invitation, and when I found out those positions, I did not show up.
Thank you, James.
Would you denounce what they stand for? That's my question.
Excuse me.
Would you denounce what they stand for? Moms for Liberty is James's question.
I'm not going to issue a denunciation. I'm telling you right now, I don't agree with anybody who says that we shouldn't respect gay rights, or anybody else's rights. If you're an American, you have those rights, and everybody should respect them. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that those are protected, and I always have my whole life.
James?
They let this guy really
Thank you
go.
so much for that
on.
question. We have another one from Hella, who's a retired patient care representative for a pharmaceutical company. She is in Manchester, New Hampshire. Helen.
Hi, thank you for being here. As president, what strategy would you employ to address China's recent ongoing negotiations with Havana about setting up a joint military training facility in Cuba?
Oh, okay. Here we go.
What I will do as president is to de-escalate tensions with China. Now, I understand, when the Russians went to Cuba, they went with their missile systems. They went there because we put missile systems in Turkey and Italy, as I said before. We now are putting bases and ships in the South China Sea, where we really and we're escalating tensions every day with the Chinese. There are people, the neocons in the White House, who want a war with China. And I believe that China wants to dominate the globe, but I don't believe that they want a war with the United States. We spend more on our military than the next 10 nations combined. We spend 3 times what China spends. We have 800 bases around the world. China has 1.5. Oh, I don't think China wants to compete with us, and it wants to compete on an economic playing field. And I am not frightened of that. I don't think that we can do it as long as we're spending 1.3 trillion on military and national security expenses every year. I don't think we can compete globally economically. I think we ought to de-escalate. We ought to unravel the empire, and we ought to bring that money home, start investing in our industrial base home, investing in our middle class, investing in business. My grandfather always said, and the power of a nation is not in its military, it's in its economy. And we need to build a robust economy at home, and then we need to project economic power, not military power abroad. And I think when we start doing that, the Chinese will also de-escalate.
The China, Xi has increased. He's increasingly seen as militaristic by people who are China watchers, and the military budget in China has increased steadily over the last 10 years. It's dwarfed obviously by the American military budget, but many people feel like he is more militaristic.
Well,
Do you not agree?
We spend 3 times on our military. Our military budget is 3 times what China's is. I think China is a poor country next to the United States. They have their average income, their per capita income is about a third of ours. They want to build their middle class. They're not going to do that by getting in a war. They do not want a war with Taiwan. They don't want World War III. They don't want to fight the United States in a war. They do want to compete with us economically. And I welcome that kind of competition. I think it will be good for our country. It'll be good for China. It will be good for the world. And let me just tell you something that we should all be thinking about. We're on the verge of a new era with AI, with AI technology.
Huge.
And it is the most frightening threat to, or Elon Musk a couple of years ago, when I first started taking notice of him, he said that AI is going to first take our jobs, then it's going to kill us. And he wasn't using hyperbole. The AI, it has the capacity to do terrible, terrible things to all of us. The only way that we're going to prevent that is by bringing all the smartest AI people in the world into one place and negotiating treaties. We cannot afford to be at war with Russia or with China or with Iran. We need to be figuring out ways of treaties that make AI development and have standards that are transparent, that are enforceable, that we all agree on, and we're never going to do that when we have military tensions with these nations. We need to be working together right now, and it's existential for us. So, I think it's crazy for us to continue to meet every problem with a military solution. And of course, when you do that, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you make Russia or China a military enemy, it forces them to respond militarily. And what we'll do is, as we de-escalate, we'll see whether they follow us. And that's what we need to be doing.
All right, our final question is from Dennis, who is now retired after a career with a Fortune 500 company. He's here in Chicago. Hi, Dennis.
Thank you. I'd first like to compliment you and applaud you for your courage of your beliefs. I really find it very admirable, so thank you. My question is, given the polarized state of political beliefs across the United States, what are 3 things you will do in the first 100 days of your administration to unite this country?
Well, I like that question.
There's a lot of things I'm going to do during the first 3 months, but the major thing that I'm going to do is just be rigorous about telling the truth to the American people about everything, and having the agencies tell the truth to the American people, because the division in this country, I believe the real key to the division is that we're being lied to. When I was a kid, everybody trusted the government. Why? Because the government was telling us the truth. And in fact, the first time that we ever caught the government in a lie was in 1960, when the U-2 went down in Russia. The CIA's U-2 went down. And Allen Dulles persuaded Eisenhower to lie about it. And he did, because they didn't know that the Russians, that Gary Francis Power, the pilot, had not used his suicide device, and that the Russians had captured him. So they were holding him, waiting for us to lie, and then they produced him. And when that happened, the American people said, oh my God, the government lied to us. The Americans couldn't believe that happened. And now the government lies to everybody, expects the government to lie. 20% of the 80% of Americans believe their government then. Today, less than 20% do. And 20% believe the press, because the press lies too. The only way we're going to start healing this country is if the government starts telling the truth. And that is the most important thing. I'm not going to agree with all of you. I'm going to differ with you on many, many policies. All I can tell you is I am the one president who's going to get up there, and I promise you the government is going to tell the truth to you. And I'm going to do that through national security orders. I'm going to do it through executive orders. I'm going to do it through example. And I'm going to, I'm going to make these agencies start telling the truth about everything. And again, you may not agree with me on some of my policies, but, our country is going to start healing when the government starts telling it the truth.
He's knocked over the water for the second time, dude.
He what? What was that?
He's knocked over the water for the second time.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And thank you all to our audience. We're thrilled that all of our audience and viewers could be with us for what we hope is the first of many town halls here at News Nation. Here we trust you, our audience, and we believe there's nothing more valuable than allowing you to.
Chris Cuomo is going to do some like post-game commentary. Do you want to tune in on that too, or?
Without censorship and without editing, to help you always.
You're muted. I don't know what you just said.
Choice possible. I want to remind our viewers.
I'm sorry. First we'll pause him and then we'll
information on our town hall and more resources.
We'll pause him and then we'll go to let's give our
For now,
last
I wanna
final
thank
thoughts on
Mr.
this.
Kennedy and
our
all of the
closing.
guests here in Chicago,
Okay.
in South Carolina, and in New Hampshire, and of course, most of all, you at home, our News Nation audience.
That's us. That's all
And
of
now,
you. Stay with us.
tuned for Chris Cuomo.
All right, I'll take him off here. So, and then let me come back to just us here. So, overall, I think this was a net positive for RFK Jr. That's my opinion. I think, it was definitely, damn, the viewer count just dropped. Sorry. But I think overall this was a net positive for RFK Jr. I think he definitely won over a lot of the Democrat voters who are on. Here's the thing. A lot of people paint Democrats as if they're all crazy and they're all insane, right? As if like they're all, unreasonable, as if they all want to mutilate kids and they all want to vaccinate everyone. I think people make broad generalizations about the Democrats that even I buy into, the same way people make broad generalizations about Republicans and stuff. I forget that there are common sense, reasonable people who are going to look at RFK Jr., who are in the Democratic Party, and say, you know what, maybe I don't agree with everything he said, but damn it, was he honest and coherent and smart in what he said, and his convictions are real, and I think he nails it.
I wish he would have finished that up with, we're going to tell the truth, right? We're going to tell the truth. That's the first thing we're going to do in the first 90 days. Tell the truth. And by doing so, we're going to release all the truth tellers. Julian Assange will be pardoned right away. Edward Snowden will be pardoned right away. We're going to look into Mamiya's case. I would like to learn more about Mamiya's case. I know he was a journalist that was jailed, and a lot of people say unjustly. I really, that's something that we have to do, I think, as activists, to pull other groups in as part of this coalition. So I wish he would have tied that together. I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to free the two truth tellers that are being jailed. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to hold these regulatory agencies to accountability. But I'm going to open up the door, show transparency, what they're going to do. They're going to be forced to tell the truth. So I like that what he said closing, because a lot of people always, I'm going to do this day one, this day two. He was like, no, it was the macro. It was the general. First thing first, we're going to stop lying to you. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to hold my people accountable. Now, when he says those things, I often think about his father and his uncle being like, yeah, there are some people out there are going to say no, that they're not going to want you to do that. But all in all, I thought that was really, really good. I think the gun violence questions are pretty decent. I think he has a good point of view, because he's understanding, he's being compassionate about what's going on. He is hitting the SSRI situation. But I do want to talk about the one thing he said a long time ago, when they were like, all these doctors say this and that, and you're saying this against them. He goes, this is not a priesthood over here, right? Like, we're America. We can think for ourselves. And every single time I tried a case, I had one person for the positive, one person for the negative, arguing back and forth. I can listen to two people in a court of law and then make my decisions based upon the evidence I've heard in front of them. So the shunning and the shaming of people is really, really awful. I thought that was a strong point when he did that, because, he doesn't have that powerful voice, but he looked at her, this is not a priesthood. And that was something that was really, really powerful tonight. I thought it was some of his best work. Just over and all, I have to agree with you, Jose. This is going to be more positive than negative. Where he's going to get the sound bites from that are negative, right? And his attitude towards China. One time he said, I believe China wants to dominate. And what he was trying to say, and he eventually got to it, is economically. And he says, I'm good with that, right? Because that kind of implies that if they want to compete, let's compete. You know what we're going to do? First of all, we're going to start building stuff at home. We're going to start fixing stuff at home. We're going to compete with the Chinese the way we used to do in the 50s and the 60s. We're going to start making stuff and build stuff again. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, Pasta, that's almost impossible to make it happen because all these corporations are going to take advantage of the cheap labor around the world. Well, we got to find a way. We have to find a way. We can't just be a service-based economy. Well, what's next, Jose? We're gonna unionize DoorDash. We're gonna unionize Postmates. That's what we're gonna do. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Other than the service industry, restaurants, we need to get back to the good old US of A days. Why our parents can buy houses and go to college and die respectively. They had manufacturing in this country. It's gone. We got to bring it back. So when he says, I'm ready for that, I want more about, well, what are you, when you say you're ready to compete economically with China, who wants to build their middle class, another thing he says, they want to build their middle class. That's going to make people say, oh shit, we used to have a middle class. Why can't we build the middle class again? So I really thought there were some positives there and a lot of things, but you know, these things are good. And we're so far out of the actual election and ways to go. And we're so far ahead of the game. He's already, that whole vaccine section, once again, he tore his opponents apart. He freaking educated people. And he said, well, where did I say I was against vaccines? Go ahead and show me. No, what he said was, I'm against the way it was kind of big industry came in and they made a thing about it. And we haven't properly tested these vaccines. And if I'm wrong, show me. That's what I've said. And it's like I said, go watch the Megyn Kelly interview, the 2-part interview. She's the one who's done her homework. She knew exactly what was going on. I wish these news freaking channels like News Nation, who's just another corporate kind of entity, spawned off for a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I mean, they gave Chris Cuomo a job, and we got to go listen to him now. So, you know, they got some money. They got some scuttle. They are mainstream. But I wish they was these people. I thought all in all, I gave her grade a C+. Like, she wasn't that bad. She kind of held things good. She went in there. She delivered the questions. But a lot of times, she didn't do her homework, man. And I don't know how long he's got to keep embarrassing these newscasters like the Crystal Balls and this one over here. Do your friggin' homework. If you're going to accuse somebody of something, just don't do it because you heard somebody else say it. Oh, he's against vaccines. He's a quack. He's a conspiracy theorist. Go do the education on why. That's why this book is so valuable here, man. He gives you all the receipts.
Pasta, before we go to our friend Cuomo here, I want to take a minute here just to plug something. Our friend, Big Mad Crab, I hope this will work here. I think if I do this and then I come back here and then I do this should do it. There we go. We are raising money to get these printed out here in the Bronx. This is AOC with a war thing here. Yeah. It was really good. I got a quote today. To print 50 of these, it's going to cost $150.
Shirts?
It's not. What?
Are these shirts or posters?
These are posters that we want to put around the district, in her district. We want to put these.
Wow.
Kynan and I are going to buy one, which is $10. You know, these things are only cheap if you buy them in bulk. We're going to buy one and we're going to give it to AOC. We're going to go to her district office and we're going to hand deliver it to her. You know, we want to give her something we believe represents her position in office. And so if you want to help us out, help us print these, drop a super chat, everything helps. So I know you had something you also wanted to plug.
Yeah, if you can share it. Let me get my sharing real quick. I'll add it right here.
Go ahead. Yeah,
I put it there. You just got to share that. Oh, support RFK's grassroots media coverage. I am going to drop the link in the chat. I am starting this today. We need that first one. And, you know, I pretty much just talked about every so often a special candidate comes around. He might not be the perfect candidate, but right now I think he's the right candidate. And I think that RFK is that candidate to raise the social awareness, the political literacy in America, to have the conversations that are not out there. Like I said, I don't know how anybody, despite him sucking and being bad on Israel, if you feel that way, if he's running in the Democratic Party, which is awful, we know they're not going to let him win. I don't know how anybody can sit there and say, still, what he's bringing to the table is not beneficial. If you're not saying, because the conversations, what he's talking about captured agencies, ladies and gentlemen. Those captured agencies control our government. They use censorship, not only to put some of us down and demonetize us and demoralize us, but they lift up certain voices. He's going directly at these agencies, whether they be the FDA, big tech, military industrial complex, and he's giving you the receipts and the links to have these conversations moving forward. That last part, when he talked about China's building a middle class, in the beginning, he talked about when they said, well, how are you going to pay for this? Very simple. We got a ridiculous military budget. We're going to cut that sucker right off the bat, and then we're going to bring that money home. And we're going to do what the Chinese do: infrastructure, roads, hospitals. That we're going to give people jobs, because if we ain't spending money over there, then we can spend the money back home. That's what needs to be done. That's the biggest budget. Even raising the debt ceiling, both the Republicans and the Democrats, you know what they left, Jose? That sweet spot to make sure they can continue to fund the war in Ukraine. They left themselves that out. They didn't take one penny away from the war budget, the deep state, okay, to bring back home. Not a single damn penny. So, guys, I'm going to post up this here in the chat. If you can help out, anything helps right now. We're still mad suppression, still demonetized on YouTube, still getting these things. This is going to be interesting, Jose. How do I know that they don't take this down, right? The way they took down my trip to Cuba, where they refused to give me almost $3,000 in donations. So everything's a gamble now. Everything's out there, but we got to do what we can. And we don't want News Nation or Newsweeks or Newsmax or any of these people taking the lead. We want the right questions asked. And, despite you saying that I'm biased, who's the person who went and asked the question on Israel that started this shitstorm? It was me, because I balls and strikes across the board. And I'm excited about it, and I want to get on the campaign trail because I know this guy will answer those questions. He'll take those questions. He'll let me get in the room. So, guys, if you want to help out, please do so. And I'm going to start a new YouTube page coming up, so hopefully I can avoid. It's called The Campaign for the Campaigns. When I'm in town with RFK and he has an event and he's got a couple of days off, if I'm close to Cornel West, I'm going to go to that event. If I'm close to Vivek Ramaswamy, I'm going to go to that event. I'm going to hit the campaign trail and give the right grassroots, independent media coverage that's deserved out there, instead of letting all these guys with the big money take control. We're going to do what we do, Jose. And I'm starting with this today. So if you guys want to be the first donor, it'd be great. Jump on in, leave a donation, 5, 10, 20. I do have some super raise real quick. Do you have any super chats?
Negative. I think a lot of my audience today was new, people looking for the speeches. All I ask is people just drop a subscribe and a like. So go ahead, Pasta. Read your super chats.
I'm going to put it won't let me. Come on. It won't let me. I'm trying to put a comment in. It won't let me put the comment in. Okay, I'll just read them real quick. So I got two, and one is a $50 one from my friend TD. He says, appreciate your in-depth coverage on this and all that matters. Thank you, TD. You always come through when it's time to rock and roll. I appreciate that's a very generous donation, and it really does help. The second donation is from Hemcar, $20, a 20 spot. Thanks for the vital questions you are asking. Next time you speak with Dr. West, I suggest you show him clips of proof of Fauci's fraudulence. I told him to get the book. It's in the book, Chapter 7. He can go right there. So Chapter 7 is where it explains a lot. The link proves the NPs cause sterility. Nothing's more important than not contaminating the human gene pool and threatening all of humanity. Dude, that is so true. And I hope he does his research on that. I did what I could do to bring up some of the information. I even asked him if that vaccine was still safe and effective in himself. And he's got a link there, guys. If you want to check it out, share that link. Thank you so much. But if you guys can help on out, we have the Give, Send, Go up today. It's just getting started. We're going to rock and roll. We're going to send it out there, and we're going to get on the campaign trail.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I did get a super chat from Kinky. Thanks, Jose and Pasta. Thank you, Kinky.
Thank you, Kinky.
Yeah, that's right. Anybody who sends a super chat has declared their independence. That's the thing.
There you go.
If you become a member, that's another way of declaring your independence.
We got to do a raffle for that shirt, by the way.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, should we?
Put that on a shirt and get a raffle for that one.
That's a good idea. We have other designs, too, that we're going to put. You know what? That's not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea. We might even get one signed by Greg himself. Maybe we could raffle that too. Split the proceeds and then get it to fundraise it so we could print more of those. Somebody asked me if I'm going to appear on Judge Napolitano again. Maybe. Who knows? Oh my God! Another super chat. This is amazing.
Here they come.
Good bash, gents. Thank you. It's not over. We're not done yet. We're gonna see what our friend Chris Cuomo has to say. We're just taking a short pause here just to kind of plug our stuff in, before the people who just wanted to see the live stream leave. But thank you very much, Nomen Nudum. I appreciate you. Your independence has been declared. And people should also check out my Patreon if they want to see a Victoria Nuland documentary. We just posted parts 1, 2, and 3. In fact, Pasta, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to show a little bit here.
Sure.
Before we go to Chris Cuomo, I just want to play a trailer for that for the documentary. I made this today.
Oh, by the way, while you're getting that up, just want to say I did get my first donation on my Give Send Go. Thank you so much. Oh, wait, I got 2 of them. Can you share mine real quick? Let me see.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Look
brother.
how awesome the peeps are out there.
People
You guys are
amazing.
amazing. Dude, Tallulah May with $20. Much love, Pasta. Thank you, Tallulah May. TD sends me $100. Thank you so much. Thank you for doing what you do with appreciation, admiration, and respect. Guys, this has always been about you guys. It has always been about getting out there and giving you guys just listen. There's a lot of people who say it's messed up nowadays in this country. Well, I believe it's messed up because there's not enough people like me and Jose doing what we should be doing, and that's getting a microphone, getting in our politicians' face, asking the right questions, bringing information to light. If you want to know about what's going on in other countries, we can do these things, and you guys make it possible. We don't have any of the big donations. In fact, they stay away from us because they want us silenced. And Copeland Morris also left me a Finsky. Thank you so much, Copeland Morris, on the Rockfin Premium. All these premium members, almost 40 of them today, they're all subscribed for $14.99 a month. And thank you so much. If you guys can afford it, go on over to that Rockfin and subscribe. Thanks, Jose and Pasta. Thank you, Copeland Morris. That is amazing for you guys to do that today. I wasn't even going to do a show tonight, and then Jose convinced me.
Oh, hey, can you put the good thank Brian again for the cat food?
Look, he's
Thank
coming
you.
in.
So
Coming in hot.
send me the Give Send Go link. Somebody's asking for it. I'll put it in my chat too.
I just put it in your YouTube. I'll put it in there again.
Yeah, send it here in the private chat too, so I can
I'll
put it
send
in.
it right now in the private chat. Absolutely. But
Yeah.
guys, thank you so much. You guys are helping us out, and this is great.
No,
you
yeah,
know?
no, thank you.
I
Thank you, really.
expect. I'm sorry to speak over my man over here, and I got to
No,
practice not speaking over him. But I expect to be in rallies and town halls with Jose, and like I'm gonna set it up like CNN style. You know, we're gonna try to talk to Dennis Kucinich as much as we can. We're gonna try to talk to Kennedy and stuff. But I expect Jose to be on some of those events with me. We've already got together in New Hampshire, and you know, we've been together in New York. We've been together in DC. He came on the stage over there. So I expect to continue working with my man over here from the Schiller Institute. Are you Schiller or are you LaRouche? I'm sorry, I got them mixed up.
I'm
Jose.
both. Well, we're technically both, and also declaring into. I'm Jose Vega. Okay, that's.
You're Jose Vega. He's Jose Vega. Got it.
So, just real quick before we go to Chris Cuomo, ladies and gentlemen, there is more content coming your way. I know you all, and yes, the AOC war graphic is excellent. Again, more super chats help us print more of these. I'm just going to shill our trailer that I made today to help promote our documentary, chapters 1, 2, and 3 on Victoria Nuland. So let me see if I can pull this up here. Present, share screen.
This is going to be great, guys.
All right, here we go. Bam.
Get to decide what happened in Ukraine. Who exactly is this person?
Let me start this over with the volume up.
How does Jabba the Hutt over here get to decide what happens in Ukraine? Who exactly is this person?
She was bipolar. I didn't know that either.
School had substantiated cases of sexual misconduct.
Depressed for 6 months.
Welcome back. Top 10 reasons why Bertrand Russell was actually one of the best peacemakers in all of history.
He believed the United States should have preemptively bombed the Soviet Union before they were able to develop their own nuclear bomb. He called on then President Clinton to put ground troops in Iraq, stating that bombing Iraq wasn't enough. The KGB used to rifle his office regularly. Even on the State Department's own website, they admit that they're looking for people who can, quote, retain their composure in times of great stress. Like a military coup, Nuland's job is to dress up all that ugliness into democracy. Anyone who has presented an alternative or an objection to this policy has been assassinated, blackmailed, or turned corrupt. If her crazy childhood wasn't enough to convince you this woman is crazy, or the fact that she married a really fat Kevin James who's even more bloodthirsty than she is, let me try and convince you further.
That's
right,
gonna be
yeah.
that's awesome, dude. That is
Yeah.
awesome. Robert Kagan is a fat Kevin James. What do you call him? Fat dude? That's
Yeah.
awesome, dude.
That's right. That's right. So without further, and people can, if people want to see complete chapter 1, 2, and 3, they can sign up on our Patreon, or it's in the description, patreon.com/declaring independence. With that being said, brother, let's go over here to Chris Cuomo, unless there's anything else you wanted to say.
No, let's do it.
All right, let's bring this up here. Present, share screen. I'm very interested to see what other people are going to say about Mr. Cuomo here. I think this, and let's hit that.
Governor on the panel, Governor. You're the only governor. I think that was the bottom. They could understand. They got past you a political maelstrom.
From the country.
Townhall, televised.
Okay, here we go.
All right, I'm Chris Cuomo, and you're watching the end of our first nationally televised town hall. Bobby Kennedy Jr. Wanted an opportunity to address a cross-section of voters and talk to them on their terms about what matters, and he got it. Elizabeth Vargas moderated, in my opinion, brilliantly, and I've done many of these town halls. They are not easy, a great balance of topics, and Mr. Kennedy got the opportunity to try to convince voters like you that you may have an alternative if you're a Democrat. I want to bring our panel back and see how they saw it. Democratic strategist Hank Scheinkauf, former Wisconsin governor and former presidential candidate Governor Scott Walker, and Dick Russell, friend of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and author of The Real RFK Jr. Trials of a Truth Warrior. Hank, how did he do?
He needs some help as a candidate. It's going to take time for him to develop as a candidate. The issue, the core of the things he's talking about have great emotional resonance to an awful lot of people in the country. The economic arguments were very good. He's got to tighten up his arguments, though, in a way that gets into sound bites so that he sounds more like a candidate, frankly.
Or is those the stylistic changes to truncate the soundbite, the clip, the message? Is that actually what reads as inauthentic? And could his deeper dives on these things work in his favor in terms of authenticity?
There's another way to say it. Shorter answers that hit the emotional chords. He's on the cusp of those emotional chords that the Americans really feel about, strongly so. He's got to get to it faster. Why? They're just not going to pay attention. That's the unfortunate nature of our politics. That's unfortunately also a gift that political consultants like me gave the country over the last 50, 60 years. We've got to get to it faster. He's got lots of good ideas. He's got passion. And that's part of what Americans are looking for.
You know, Gov, I've been covering you for a long time, and you and I have gone round and round on topics before. And when you had to deal with a referendum in your own state, it was your ability to make the case to the people in a way that they could understand. They got past you a political maelstrom. What do you see in Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s approach in terms of his balancing his kind of heartfelt advocacy with coming off as a leader?
Oh.
Gov?
Sorry about that. I thought you're
the only governor on the panel, Governor.
The bottom
You're the only governor.
What the fuck? See, that's why you don't legalize pot.
Bullshit. Get out of here. That's alcohol right there, pal.
Sorry, let's keep going.
I think that was the bottom line I said on the way in before the show, that authenticity was the right issue. And for him, yeah, I agree, you got to tighten it up a little bit. But for example, when he talked about inflation and what was the cause for that, and pointed to the endless bank bailouts and the endless wars as an example, what's driving government spending, which is pushing up inflation. I thought that was the kind of thing that populist voters on either end of the spectrum could find appealing. So yeah, tighten it up a little bit, but the authenticity was there. And I think people saw he's more than a one-issue candidate.
You know, also, look, the beautiful thing about this is everybody's got their perspective, right? Hank is a pro. He gives amazing advice to people. He's done it for a long time. I've been following his work my whole life. The governor is a really good communicator. I'm a journalist, and what I crave is depth from these men and women and get them away from their sound bites and try to scratch into why they believe what they believe. And you got a lot of that from Bobby Kennedy Jr. tonight. Dick, do you believe, as a friend of his and someone who knows him, do you believe that was his best self tonight?
Yeah, I think so. And I think he raised a lot of issues that people just don't realize and don't know about. In the whole story about being at the border and realizing that it was the Mexican drug cartels that are really running a lot of the show down there. I mean, that's got to shock a lot of people. It was certainly a surprise to me to hear about it. And then he brings up really cutting edge issues, that I think people have got to make people think like, okay, should we legalize marijuana federally? What about psychedelic drugs? What about setting up these rehabs, health centers for kids with psychiatric problems? I mean, all those are new and innovative ideas for anybody in his position to talk about. And I think, a lot of people will find that very appealing.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it also betrays the fact that he hasn't been in an office and working government levers and different operations of government to make things happen. There's an idealism that comes from his advocacy base that's interesting to hear. You don't hear politicians and people who work in government offer up a lot of his kinds of suggestions because they usually look at it through the lens of, well, how does it work here in terms of financing and policy? So how did it resonate with the folks at home? We have a caller on the phone right now.
This
What's
is
your
interesting.
name and where are you from?
Hello. My name is. Hello.
Hello. What's your name? Where are you from?
Jeanette from Long Beach, California.
How you doing? What'd you think of Bobby Kennedy Jr.?
I did think that he did have some good points, but don't you think he could have been more consistent with what he can offer in policies and also to stick up for more human rights and freedom of what the Democrats, especially and independents, really want to see in a candidate?
Yeah, but I mean, it's all about what you want, right? I mean, he could have done a lot of things differently. He could have done things better. He could have done things worse. The trick here is, did he connect with you? Was there something that you wanted to hear, or what you already came into it feeling that you wanted somebody to harness for you in a position of power? Did it connect for you?
In some points, yes, and in some points, no. I think that if I want to vote for him and not Biden, I want to see more of his policies, more of an explanation, more of seeing what he wants to do and what he can do.
Right. Look,
and to push back against the Republicans.
Yeah, look, he's got to be tested also, not to pat ourselves on the back. But Dick, you know this, to go back to the panel, to the caller's point, not a lot of people are giving him platforms for two reasons. One, he says some stuff that's extreme, and the media is increasingly concerned about putting on extreme ideas. I don't like this tendency. I don't like playing scared. I believe in more ideas. The job just gets more challenging. Test the extremes. Don't censor the extremes. But he's not getting platforms, certainly like he got tonight. Do you think, Dick, that you expect him to get more opportunities after his performance?
Well, I would hope so. I mean, the fact is that Bobby's been censored by more than,
Hold
it's
on,
just
Gov.
unbelievable.
Let me just hear Dick Gov.
You
Governor,
see-
I'll
you
come to
see?
you 1 second. I'll come to you 1 second. Dick, just finish your thought.
This guy is like,
Yeah,
you
I mean,
know,
Bobby Kennedy's been
he's a little,
Governor? Yeah, he
governor's-
definitely does not smoke weed, Scott Walker. He's definitely a hard-ass conservative. And that's why a little weed might loosen him up and relax him so he's not so over-anxious, you know what I'm
No,
saying?
you're right. He's probably drunk. He probably is drunk.
Scott Walker's a funny character. He's always been a funny character for quite some time, man. And by the way, I did get another $100 donation from TD on my my gifts and go, and I got another tip on the Rockfin guys. Everything helps out. Help us get on the campaign trail. Thank you.
Beautiful. I'm really, really happy to hear that. All right, let's keep it going here.
censored unbelievably for the past 12, 15 years, and he hasn't been allowed to write an op-ed. He can't even write a letter to the editor. He used to be lionized by the New York Times. Now he's considered anathema, and it's the fact is that I think there's a lot of fear out there in the establishment of what will this guy. For one thing, I think he's very passionate, very serious. He would change things. Maybe, do we need a revolutionary in this country in terms of where we're headed and in terms of saving our democracy? That's going to be a decision that people are going to have to make. And I think there's a lot who will say yes.
Governor Walker, make your point.
Yeah, I agree with some of his ideas. I don't agree with some of the others out there. But I think it's hard to say he doesn't have passion and a sense of where he'd like to go if he was president of the United States. And it's not aligned with one party or another. That's going to be one of the difficulties for some of the traditional primary voters, particularly as Democrats, although I think the same would be true on the other side of the aisle, because they're used to candidates saying, I'm going to attack the other party as part of my appeal to get primary votes. He made it very clear he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to engage in personalities. He wants to talk about what he believes in. That may be tough in a primary, but I think it's going to be very appealing to populist voters on either end of the spectrum.
Well, Hank, you've been observing a phenomenon. I've been reading your thoughts on it now for a couple of years. There is a significant attrition away from the party.
Sorry, do you want to comment on what you just said?
Can you do me a favor? Can you go into our private chat and just take that very safe U.S. Biolabs and put that in the regular comments so we can put it up on the screen?
Yeah,
somebody did make a point right over here because I think this is very, very true. It's another Super 8 contribution. And by the way, it's very safe U.S. Biolabs, $5 tips to Pasta, right? Pasta, you just double Cuomo's ratings. LMAO. I think with our combined audiences today, we thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and Jose that we have doubled his ratings. Listen, I've always been really tough on Cuomo. I think he's doing a halfway decent job here. He's not going over the top, and yet he's still kind of saying what he says a little bit, out of there, a little radical. I mean, he still has that talking point, but I think that this is a different Cuomo now that he doesn't have to deal with the CNN sitting over his head. Not to say that he's anything good. The only way he saves his career is if he comes and he recruits me to do his show, Chris and Craig, and then we can have a nice debate every single day on his show. And thank you to TD, who also left me another, if you can really put up my, really quickly, that my share screen from, you can see right there. This is awesome, guys. Thank you so much. TD left a message. He said, Pasta and Jose, you stand resolute and help us all. The hero is the man who lets no obstacle prevent him from pursuing the values he has chosen. Thank you so much.
Amen to that.
Amen.
All right. Let's
back to the Cuomo clown show.
But I will say though, they keep talking about wanting more policy and stuff, but like, in my opinion, it's not about policy at this point. It's about leadership and authority. You can't have good policy. And this is what really annoys me about people who say we need to organize based on policy, right? A lot of criticisms that I get on the interventions, or me in general, is like, well, what policy are you proposing? Well, first of all, we do have some policies that we're promoting at the Schiller Institute and LaRouche organization. But overall, really, it's about bringing a sense of a real leader. You know what made FDR so effective? Is that when he was running, he said, I know things are messed up. I know mistakes have been made. That alone, come on. It's not the hardest thing to do. And that's why Biden is so unpopular, because he keeps trying to tout his own achievements. He keeps trying to say, well, we did actually good things. The economy's in a great shape. And then when you say that and then people look at their reality, there's a real discord in that. Nobody believes that shit, right? Nobody
Trump does that, right? Always talk about sunshines. I don't know. There's something to that. And I think they're only going after a certain voter when they get that. I do think we need some kind of tough love. We need some honesty right now. To me, it's not about as much policy. And I do like policy. I'm a policy guy. But 100%, I'm with you, Jose. For me, it's more about holding corruption accountable and exposing it and bringing it out. Just that alone. When he says I'm going to make these agencies tell the truth, he's exposing the corruption, the lies that they have. He's going to make them transparent. That's the whole thing. First things first, you have to take care of corruption. Then you can work your way to everything else, policy-wise, and all the other things. But you have to start by ending the corruption first. And I agree with you. Connecting with just the honesty he brings and connecting. And you're right. Exactly. We need that. We need more of this RFK and Cornel West kind of talk inside our politics and our society.
I say that. No, I agree. I mean, I always say, first you got to get rid of the cancer, but getting rid of cancer doesn't mean the person's going to survive, right? Like, congrats, you cured the cancer. They still got to live. They still got to eat. They still got to, live well and stuff. So, yeah, anyway, let's keep going here.
Why? 100 reasons. But you know that the plurality in this country, right, the largest single group is independence. And Bobby Kennedy, say whatever you want about his politics. He's a smart guy, and he understands the savvy of politics. That's the play he's making, is that people are anti-party. What do you think of that play? Obviously, it's self-limiting in a primary system that's dominated by two parties in most states. But what do you think of the play that, hey, I'm not about party, and to the extent I am, this isn't my father's party anymore?
I think what you're asking are very important questions. This is a very passionate and compassionate man who has extraordinarily interesting ideas that can be told to people in ways that they might even like. Okay, and he can do that. And I think he can be very competitive in Democratic Party primaries by running against the elites. And that's maybe radical, but that's where he's got to be. And he can be very competitive in a general election where he's the nominee. Why? The same strategy: run against the elites. That was the secret to Trump's success. It was the secret to the success of others. When Clinton said it's the economy, stupid, he was talking about people who are manipulating the economy for their own good. Frankly, and he won the election based on it. That's where we're heading as a country. The kind of Kennedy candidacy could frankly unite us more than divide us if he can learn to be a candidate, which takes a lot of time.
It was very interesting. And no disrespect. Again, I know Bobby Kennedy Jr. for most of my adult life. His sister and my brother
Hold on, I see you
were
got
married
another
for
one
many
here.
years, and they have 3 beautiful kids together.
Here you go, Mr. Garrison. $5 for pasta. Thank you kindly. Pasta, do you ever get tired of the jokes that people make? Like, oh, I hope you get it for rigatoni or something. Like $5 for pasta, no?
I do not get tired of the jokes, especially when they give me $5 to make a joke. So please make all the jokes you want. The bigger the joke, the bigger the donation. I'll take it, and I'll go to work for you guys the way I always do.
Okay, let's keep going.
He said something I don't think you had ever heard from his father or either of his uncles. He was talking about violence in this country. And I want to bring in the people who were at the town hall and see if they caught this and what it meant to them. Every time a Kennedy talked about a problem in this country, they would have an imaginary and a purposeful message to uplift, to transcend. Okay? Rarely did you hear them playing into the fear of a perceived problem. They were always about finding a way to transcend. Tonight, he said something about violence that I thought was really interesting and really resonant, but not Kennedy-esque. Something happened in this country. Maybe a big shot is the culprit. And then he went on to say, they used to have rifle clubs in my schools and nobody ever came in and shot kids. And now they shoot kids. What happened? That's an opportunity to play to our better angels and where we are at our best, and what is obviously allowing people who are sick, who are disassociated, who are in a bad space to act out that way, and what it means about our culture. And it was interesting to me to hear him play to the fear and the suspicion of it. It's an unusual break from his own family's tendencies. And I want to go to the people who watched the town hall tonight and see what they took away. Dusty, do you have anybody from the town hall?
We do. Yes, we do. We can go to someone in Charleston, South Carolina.
Good.
Right now. James is his name. He asked a question.
James Williams from Charleston, South Carolina. Hey,
oh,
thank
it's the
you.
LGBTQ
Very
guy.
articulate tonight. Doug the passion. Doug, you're chasing after Bobby about saying it was his staffer, although I think in fairness to him, it was his staffer. What'd you think about his answer to you, and what did you think of his appeal in general?
I think at a 30,000-foot level, he needs a lot of work. I think Hank's exactly right. If you're going to run for president of the United States, if you're explaining, you're losing. Shorter bites, shorter. He's got to get trained on the stump. And tonight was not, in my opinion, a great way out of the gate. That being said, the idea that, first of all, get rid of staffers who make mistakes like that. That would be the other thing I would say. But in the end, do I think he can get better on the trail? Sure. Practice makes perfect. But again, he's not going to be able to thread the needle on every single issue. He tried that tonight. It doesn't work. He's running in the Democratic primary. He's not running as an independent. You want to run as an independent, you can say whatever the hell you want. You're running as a Democrat, you don't. And if you do, you don't win. And that just, I think
not true.
I was talking about this with
That's
some
not
friends at the dinner
true.
party on
That's
Saturday.
not true. That's exactly why the Democratic Party is like dying, right? You have to say what people want to hear. Well, what people want to hear is bullshit anyway. So,
He's talking to the voters. He's not talking to the Democratic Party. He doesn't help their help. He doesn't need their help. He doesn't care what they said. He even said all the Democrats can say they're against my position on the war. I'm going to still say it. So this guy is wrong. And I think the fact that they are dumbing down the whole situation, he can incorporate some more sound bites into what he's saying. And if he does say something, he's got to make sure he doesn't slip. Like he did say, like, China wants to dominate the planet, right? And he should have said economically dominated the planet, or saying China wants to dominate the planet economically. You know what I'm saying? Make sure that can't be cut out and misrepresent it, because that's what's going to happen. So you have to make sure you limit those areas where you don't say exactly what you mean, of course. But I think what he did today, he's speaking very intelligently. He's speaking to, and look at his competition, by the way. This guy, he's got to get better on the stump. Better than who? Trump? Better than freaking Biden, who can't put 3 words together? No, I think that RFK is in a good place. I think right now he's the best. That this is probably one of the better town halls you see out there. I want to see Cornel West do, and I think Cornel West will get some points too as well. So, but I mean, this guy is a little bit too tongue-in-cheek for me, a little bit too vanilla, you know what I'm saying? And that question is not, that question he asked is not one of the most important issues out there right now for the people. It might be important to Democrats that are not going to vote for him, and he's not going to get those votes anyways. So he's got to make sure that he doesn't stray too far away. And I think he did a good job with that question. You know what I'm saying? We respect everybody, every person across the board. You know what I'm saying? And he didn't get too far either way with it. But, I think he just got to be careful he doesn't second guess himself, because that's another example right now. Now we know of 2 tweets that were taken down. The last one with the meme, the ones with Roger Waters. This is another area where he didn't go when I found out right away. I think that's that's the lesson that we need that RFK needs to learn, is to make sure you don't put yourself in a position where you have to retract. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to go on the stage. Now I'm not going to go on the stage like some people we know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, and then the dumbest part about this guy was the guy said, well, I was really upset that you were going to speak at this group that you ultimately didn't end up speaking at. And then RFK Jr. says, yeah, I didn't speak at their thing because I disagreed with their views of exactly what you're bringing up. And then the guy's like, well, denounce them. It's like, what? Come on.
Yeah.
You gotta take
this guy's a Democrat.
Yeah, exactly.
He's trying really hard. Latte liberal. He's trying to look like, like Grizzly Adams over there with the beard and stuff and the hat, but then he's got a nice suit on, and you got to get better on the stump. Like, he's just talking like, James Carville talk that doesn't mean shit anymore. We're in a different time. People want honesty. They want integrity. They want character. They want truth. And that's what this guy is bringing to the table. You might not like his answer, but he's going to answer it. He's going to answer it truthfully and intelligently, unlike the other, Captain Joe Biden. What did he say today? Putin's losing the war in Iraq. This is his competition, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, this guy just needs to kind of get his head out of his ass for a second. I mean, that whole, you can't say what you want if you're running as a Democrat. Like, really? Yeah. What? So what is the status quo? What agenda do you have to agree with? That's why they're sinking. So anyway, let's keep her going.
Saturday. And the one thing they all said, Kennedy's running for president. Do we want another Kennedy? Do we want another Biden? Do we want another Bush? And do we want another Clinton? The answer is no. All right, but nobody was in the mood for that.
Oh, yeah.
You got to be kidding me with this shit. You want to sit there and say, do we want another Bush? Do we want another Biden? Dude, don't stop comparing these people to the 2 presidents, the 2 particular, one president that one that was one of the greatest presidents, according to a lot of people. If you go out and poll them right now, a president who had more streets named after him in Latin America than any president to walk the face of the earth. You know what I'm saying? The president that spoke about peace in an intelligent manner. This is a BS Democratic cohort over here. This guy is blue no matter who, and he's trying to look intelligent and say these bumper sticker points that are just he should be disqualified. He went after Kennedy about speaking at an event he didn't speak at.
Yeah,
and then he
exactly.
said, well, can you denounce them? Like, everybody's done with that type of politic, that type of cancel culture, that type of you have to be forced into saying this or else you're not that. And Kennedy handled it beautifully. This guy's a clown. Sorry, go ahead, Jose.
No. I completely agree with you. I think this guy is exactly why, if enough Democrats see this guy, they're going to look at this guy and be like, damn, is this really what my party has become? Yeah. I do believe there are common sense people in the Democratic Party. And
there are.
I hope so, because I don't know how people live with themselves knowing they elected Biden and then turns out to be this terrible. Did you see what Biden did today, by the way? He was talking about consecration and competition, and then all of a sudden he freezes, and then he looks down and he says, I didn't think I go to mass today. And then it was like, yeah.
Go on. Putin's winning the war, losing the war in Iraq. And this guy, do we want another Biden? Do we want another Bush? That was thought of as in a think tank from the DNC think tank to go and attack Kennedy. It's baseless. It means
totally.
nothing. Do we want another Kennedy? Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do actually. We do. Yeah. So anyway,
Let's unpack this for a second, okay?
Sure.
Because look, you know my last name, you know the family I come from, okay?
Oh,
I've never been a big fan of your party, and I really don't think it resembles the party that my father was about.
Wow.
But we're older, okay? You look better than me, but a lot of these people who he wants to vote for him don't know Kennedy's that way. They just know it as a brand and not as an elitist and an insider. And if you think about it, they haven't seen a Kennedy in office in a long time. I mean, we lost Teddy a pretty long time ago. When you think about it, I know for guys like me and you, it was 2 minutes ago, and we still miss him, and certainly his party does. But I think the process does. But I don't know that he gets sold off as a Kennedy. I think it works in his favor. My question to you, and by extension to your friends, is: do you believe that he has that secret sauce of what Trump brought, which is, I know how they play the game, but I hate it as much as you do? That's the space. Do you think he can fill it?
To be a disruptor, you have to appeal to a majority of Americans, or at least a majority if there are only 2 people running. And I'm not sure that he has that at this point. Again, do I think he can get there? Maybe. But Trump fed into something that had been there for a very long time. Middle-class Americans, lower-class Americans, and even wealthy, rich Americans, if you will, had this just great distaste for the way politics have treated them for lots of different reasons. And he fed into that fear, that anger, that bigotry, that racism, that misogyny. And he found a way to actually put that coalition together. At this point in time, do I think Bobby Kennedy Jr. can do that? No, I don't. Because A, you've already got the disruptor running on the Republican side. And so I think it was either Hank or whomever said, if he runs against the elite as an elite, perhaps he can do that. I just don't see it right now. He needs to just get better on the trail.
It's interesting. Your party is going to have a...
I mean, wow, this guy is so full of it, right? You know what I'm saying? I just don't see that, especially when the disruptor is running on the other side. This is a different type of disruptor, and this is a different type of guy. This is a guy who's way more intelligent, got way more intellect, was a lawyer, took on these companies already. Trump already had his time. He got in, and a lot of people think that he acted like he was going to oppose the elitists, but then he joined them a lot. You know what I'm saying? A lot of areas. The military budget already grew every single year. The economy didn't change. And you can even say maybe he tried to change and bring some manufacturing home when he put sanctions on China, but it didn't work. You know what I'm saying? So what this guy is saying is so inaccurate. And I also want to say this much too as well. When it came to John F. Kennedy, when it came to Bobby Kennedy Sr., it was a lot different. They got a lot of help because they had the family dynasty. Daddy was around, was still very powerful. They had a lot more. They had a leg up. RFK was never in politics. He earned his spot over here. He's come from a different space. Just because he's a Kennedy doesn't mean he's been gifted or granted anything. Yeah, he's using the name to his advantage, and he's acting, he's very much going back and, taking from his uncle and his fathers and using that and effectively today. But this guy earned his spot, this Kennedy, much different than his father. So the comparisons that this guy is trying to make simply aren't going to work. And I would suspect, Jose, that you're going to see them try to make these comparisons as we go along. Oh, Kennedy's an elite trying to help us out. Chris Hedges almost did the same thing, just in a different way. You know what I'm saying? He was more disgusted by it. This guy is trying to be more analytical, and he's got to get better on the trail without explaining. He's trying to say there's a problem there without explaining what the problem is. He's just trying to present that facade because that's what the Democrats got to do because they don't have a leg to stand on.
I think Cuomo did something right there where he said, my last name, I also come from some kind of dynasty too, right? And the thing about RFK Jr. is that not only is he going off the branding, but like you said, he's actually doing what Kennedy would do. What he did on June 20th, referencing the June 10th speech, the peace speech, is what Kennedy would do. Okay, so not only he's in one sense, he's earning the name, is what I'm trying to say.
That's a good way to put it.
He's earning the Kennedy name. He's not just using it. He's really, flaunting it. He's really using it, is what I'm trying to say. So. Let's see here. Oh, I see. So is that Brooklyn?
Somebody put that in the Rumble chat, so I just wanted to put it up. Is that Brooklyn Dad Defiant? No, I don't think it's him. He's like, you know what I'm saying? But I know what you mean. You know what? It's the same rhetoric. That's going to be the rhetoric coming from these type of establishment, blue no matter who voters.
Yeah.
The cheap right here. They're going to just parrot shit together that they heard without having the backing behind it, without having any of the receipts, without providing any substance. They're just going to try to present an image that he needs to get better, that he's struggling, that he can't win, that he's an elite. All this BS. This guy is parroting and repeating it and stuff. And notice that he is one of the South Carolina guys to stand up and speak, and there's like 20 of them in the room. So it's kind of like, these guys are put there to do these things. This is still News Nation. It might not be a CNN, but it's a spinoff of CNN and MSNBC and Fox.
Yeah.
All together in one.
How much longer you want to go, Pasta?
We'll go a little bit more, and then whenever you're ready, we'll get out of here. How much time you got?
I'll go till midnight. My time.
All right, it's 19 more minutes. We'll do it.
Let's do it.
Hard time. But you say my party. Let me be abundantly clear.
Yeah.
I'm not a registered Democrat because you don't do that here. But in the end, I don't vote straight ticket. I don't believe in voting straight.
Wait, where is he? He's in South Carolina, right?
South Carolina.
Wait, what does he mean you don't do that here?
I don't know I don't know what he means. But when you register, if you have to register for a party, or I don't know what he's trying to say. He's going to try to say that he's independent-minded thinking when he's doing nothing but talking Democratic talking points. That's just crazy.
That's the other way he's a plant, because South Carolina, that's Biden territory.
It is.
Time.
And they've moved up that election to try to counteract the win at New Hampshire that Kennedy can get, because they can't fix it completely like they can in South Carolina, where they have a bunch of DRE machines and all this other bullshit. So.
Oh, it might be the case they have open primaries. Is that what it is?
I guess that's what he's trying to say. Let's
right.
see what the hell this donkey has to say.
Ticket. I'm a pro-business progressive Democrat, and I will vote for Republican anytime I think Republican has better ideas than Democrats. And so the idea that my party, I don't believe in my party. I believe in my country.
Well, first of all, good for you. I don't know how often you watch us here. Hopefully tonight is the beginning of a beautiful relationship. But I call voters like you a free agent, and I tell you to leave the parties. And to be independents, because I believe the two-party system is what's killing us. It's necessarily binary, and it's all about which side is worse. And I was going to say the Democrats have always had a harder case to make. Because
I should get Chris Cuomo on declaring independence. This is the whole point of our chat.
That's what I'm saying. I'm reaching out to Chris Cuomo now to get him on.
They've never been the party of grievance. And it's hard to beat grievance. There's a reason that negativity works so well in politics. It's easy to get people angry. It's hard to get them to want to transcend anger through anything better than that. It's a tough case. And we'll see how Biden does with it. That's the only thing I'd push back on you about is, anything you're saying about Bobby Kennedy Jr. may well be valid, but it's also true about Joe Biden. He ain't great on the stump. He's not good with his answers. He can't even get the war right that Putin's in right now.
I don't disagree with you on that. But remember something Bill Clinton said, I feel your
pain.
Whoa.
Can you go back to that? Can you? I just hear him say that little
May
speech
well be
again
valid, but it's also true about Joe Biden. He ain't great on the stump. He's not good with his answers. He can't even get the war right that Putin's in right now.
He can't even get the war right that Putin's in right now.
And does this guy say I disagree with you? Oh my lord!
I don't disagree with you on that. But remember something Bill Clinton said.
Wait, are you saying I don't?
I don't disagree with you on that. But remember something Bill Clinton said, I feel your pain. I've always said in politics, Democrats feel your pain, Republicans transact your pain. And I would suggest that if Democrats start transacting a little bit more and Republicans start feeling your pain a little bit more, we might have a bit more of a melding in the middle of the country and people will actually stop hating their politics. But by God, Democrats can't stop feeling your pain. Democrats can't stop transacting how you live your life.
I think that the more we get away from the parties and towards solutions, and that becomes the commodity versus who's.
For a guy who says, "No, I'm not a Democrat. I'd vote for a Republican." He's out here giving the most Democratic maxims you can give out here. He's like,
they always do that shit. They always try to act like they're independent thinking and whatnot. But right now, this guy's he seems like a blue no matter who to me. Or you know what I'm saying? Maybe every once in a while he'll do something. But yeah.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Woo, avocados.
Hey, Brian, you got some avocados going over there, man. That's awesome.
All right, here you go.
Worse, James or Chris, the better off we'll be. And I appreciate this conversation. And you, James, you really brought it tonight in the town hall, and you made it better, and you gave people food for thought. So thank you very much, and be well. All right, let's bring in the star of the night, News Nation's Elizabeth Vargas
Oh,
did a very
shit.
difficult
Okay.
job and did it very, very well. I've seen a lot of these town halls, my friend, and you got a lot of depth and breadth out of the situation tonight with those for the voters with you and all across the country. How'd it feel?
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, my friend. It was an interesting night. It was interesting hearing your conversation just now with James, because that was by far the most tense moment of the hour-and-a-half town hall. He had a really tough question for Bobby Kennedy Jr. and really followed up on that and said, I'm sorry, blaming your staff doesn't cut it. Why did you agree to speak for this group, Moms for Liberty? They were up advertising. You saw their picture, the picture of Bobby Kennedy of Moms for Liberty all over social media for quite some time before he finally canceled that appearance. So it was a tough exchange. It was really interesting to watch. It was the one really, I think, close to real uncomfortable moment in there. That and maybe when a few of the doctor in the audience that was challenging him on vaccines and saying, what you're doing is crazy. How do we bring you, the doctor said, back to the side of science, and Robert Kennedy Jr. thought he said, back to your senses. The interesting thing I thought, Chris, I'm not sure what your highlights were, but I found it very interesting that he refused to pledge to back whoever the Democratic nominee of the party is. I think, in fact, we have a clip
let's play
of me asking him that, because he talked all about.
We got to record that clip.
Okay, let's play it.
All right.
As a lifelong Democrat, as you just said very passionately, will you pledge to support whoever the Democratic nominee is, whoever it is, whether it's you, whether it's President Biden?
Oh, of course I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to
do that.
No, of course I'm not.
So
Listen,
if you don't get the nomination, you won't support President Biden?
I don't know what I'll do. Let's see let's see what happens in this campaign. Let's see, what if people are living up to democratic values and having debates and having discussions and talking to each other. But I'm not going to buy.
If you feel that's not happening, would you then support a Republican or run as an independent?
You know what? My plan is to win this election, and I don't have a plan B.
He's going to get one. What did you make of the exchange?
It was interesting because he initially off the top, without me having to even ask him, said, people have asked me, why aren't you running as an independent? And I'm not an independent. I'm a Democrat. I've always been a Democrat. I'm a Democrat through and through. And yet by the end, when he says, I don't know if I'll support President Biden if he's the nominee, he's sounding more and more like somebody who might run as an independent or even support somebody else, which
a little bit. He's keeping it open at least.
Issue that many Democrats fear, which is that he's a sort of stalking horse candidate.
I don't think so, because if you were saying I'm a Democrat through and through, and I want my party back, I wouldn't. If I was RFK, I wouldn't support Biden on that basis. You're not going to give me the party I want back. So of course I wouldn't. But anyway, that's just what I think. You're right. He is also keeping the door open for
the door open. He's keeping the door open. That's important right now because everybody's saying he's going to pledge right now to donate. In fact, as soon as we end this thing, I'm going to go clip that and put that up.
Oh yeah. You should. I'll send you the live stream I got this from. Because to be honest, with
I think I'll get it on my end. Will I get it on my end or no?
Oh, you will. You will. Maybe, probably.
If I don't, I'll call you. We'll get it. I want to clip that up and put that up and stuff. So
I gotta be honest with you, folks. You needed to pay for a subscription to News Nation to get this. I'm on a 2-day free trial, so remind me to cancel.
Guys, help him out. Throw a couple bucks in the chat. That's great. Let's wrap this up right now. I think I've had enough. I think we should just close it out. I'm getting so tired anyways.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
Let's close her out. Let's end right there. That's a good way to end. Just give us our closing thoughts, and let's do our closing thoughts. Over and all, I think this was positive, regardless of what that South Carolina voter, James Williams or whatever his name was, said, and where he tried to trap them. And she even when I said C+, maybe B- if she, turns in a little extra credit, maybe that extra credit that she brought, because I thought that was one of the most important moments, because a lot of people have been saying you can't support him. He's got to support the Democrat. No, he doesn't. He doesn't. And he made it plain. He made it clear as day. I'm not going to support anybody right now, and I'm not going to commit to supporting anybody right now. Of course, I'm not going to do that. That was one of the most important moments of the thing tonight, even though he did a lot of other great things. And I just, look forward to him having more of these town halls, these rallies, and debates. Hopefully, he can have some debates. Him and Cornell would be a great debate.
This is why we need to dissolve parties. I, honest to God, think if we just had general elections, no primaries, right, he would win. He appeals to everyone, independents, Republicans, Democrats, or the sensible kind at least, you know. He's killing it. See, and that's the other thing. He's campaigning right now as if this were a general. And I actually kind of like that. I really do. You know why? Because he's just being honest in himself. And that, to me, is exactly what you need in the leadership. I just think he's kind of being muzzled by the Democratic Party. But those are my thoughts. Pasta, I don't know if you have anything else?
No, that's it. Other than that, like I said, if he's going to be, not take the gloves off and go directly at the people, he retracted a tweet this week that, that was kind of like Joe Biden blowing up Uncle Sam or something like that. And he said, don't want to take personal shots because Joe Biden had the bazooka and maybe that's why he was saying it was too personal. Then he's got to find ways to tie it into the policies that are wronged the people. Like, in other words, when he was asked about Hunter Biden, listen, I'm not going to make it a statement about Hunter Biden. I don't know him personally. I don't know any addict. I hope that they recover because I'm an addict myself and I know how awful it is. But I want to just talk about the fact that, can you imagine if he had to live by the same rules in which the crime bill has taken addicts and thrown them in jail, called them super predators? That is where he needs to find a way to tie it in, to attack the policy. And as he's attacking the policy, he's directly attacking the person. You know what I'm saying? If he doesn't want to attack anybody personally, attack the policy that's tied to that person. Take that shot when you have a chance. That's an opportunity he missed today, that one small opportunity. Other than that, he really set the tone. I mean, once again, masterful during the vaccine part. He's had this debate before. He's ready for this. America needs to catch up. These reporters need to get. The reason why she got a C+ B- and got to move to a B- after that is because she didn't do her homework there. She just threw out generalizations and tried to use the generalizations to attack him. And what do you think? He hasn't had this debate before, Jose? He's just going to go, well, no. He knows exactly what to say. You didn't do your homework. Go watch the Megyn Kelly interview. I tip my hat off to Megyn Kelly. And Chris Cuomo, come on the show, Convo Couch, Chris and Craig. We'll have Jose moderate, and we'll have a good time.
Well, actually, you know what? Before you go, Greg, I do want to put together a panel, not just with you. I want you in it, right? But I want to do one just on China, just one on just Israel, one on just vaccines, because I've had enough guests on the show to have a very diverse view that the conversation would be very productive. So I gotta get you back for this panel. I'll organize it sometime. It'll be great. It'll be great.
Can I throw my Give, Send, Go up one more time?
Brother, go ahead.
Thank you so much, guys. There it is, the Give, Send, Go. The address is givesendgo.com/RFK Media and RFK Caps Media. RFK Caps Media. No caps, just they're in capital letters. And thank you to those guys who donated today. TD, let me get over there too as well. I'm a little tired of it. Tallulah May, much love to you too as well. TD did it twice, man. That helps so much, guys. Do us a favor. Please get over there. Help me get on the campaign trail. I'm not just going to cover RFK. I'm going to go hunt down anybody who's running, and I'm going to hit them with the tough questions, man. And I can't thank you guys enough. And the Super Rays have all been counted for. $85 tonight, and a night we weren't even going to do a show, man. That means a lot, guys. It really does. All the ways to help out the Convo Couch. You know how to do that. Patreon, YouTube. YouTube, you can't leave us any money, so stay away from them. But Rockfin, you can sign up for a membership. It all helps, and I look forward to getting on that campaign trail.
Amen, brother. Thank you. Just once again, that's givesendgo.com/RFK Media. People want to support Pasta on his journey for independent media coverage of the town hall events like the one we saw tonight. And just on my end, subscribe and like. That's all I can ask for. So with that, Pasta, I don't have a sign off. So what I do is I just hit end broadcast and then I keep talking.